Chapter 168. Wujiang County was only a small place in the entire Wu Kingdom. However, even in such a small place there were still some outstanding people. Zhao Junwu was the most famous person in Wujiang County in the past 100 years. He was a general of the Wu Kingdom and a second-grade official. He had earned his reputation through real battles. As such, 100 years later, General Zhao Junwu was posthumously conferred the title of General of Wind and Cloud by the imperial court. He was allowed to open a temple in his hometown in Wujiang County for future generations to worship and worship. It had been more than 30 years since the military temple was set up. After all, it had been a long time. The military temple was not like the traditional Guanyin temple or the local temple that was accepted by the masses. As such, it had begun to decline year by year. Early in the morning, Ziyue left his house and went to the military temple. Perhaps it was due to the influence of the past, but although the temple was not as prosperous as before, it was still quite spacious. As he stepped into the temple, the image of the mighty military general made people feel a sense of awe. At the same time, Ziyue immediately recognized the image of the general. Wasn't it the same person in the rundown temple in Qinghe town? It seemed that the military temple was indeed in decline. There was no one in Qinghe town to take care of it. Ziyue spent more than 10 copper coins to buy a few incense sticks from the temple boy. After burning them a few times, he looked at the temple boy and asked, "Is your temple attendant here? Who are you? Why are you looking for him?" The temple boy asked with some hesitation. "I was introduced by Zhou Xiangue. This is his letter of introduction." As Ziyue spoke, he handed a letter to the temple boy. As for Zhou Xiangue, that was the old scholar's real name. After a few minutes, Ziyue was brought to the backyard of the military temple by the temple boy. Compared to the magnificent front hall of the military temple, the backyard was more plain. There was only a small pavilion, a few stone pillars, and a few low-rise bungalows in the distance. At this moment, in the small pavilion, there was an old man in a light green robe quietly brewing tea. "Speak, what is it?" Suddenly, the old man raised his head and asked with an indifferent tone. However, although his words were calm, Ziyue sensed that the instant the other party raised his head, a faint light immediately shot out from his eyes. It was as if the other party wanted to see through him from head to toe. Spirit eye. This Xie Gu Tsang actually used the spirit eye technique to investigate in such an open and above-board manner in front of him without the slightest bit of concealment. Soon after, he let out a cry of bewilderment, as if he was somewhat puzzled. "Senior, aren't you being a little too rude by doing this?" Ziyue's expression changed as he frowned. "Rude? Perhaps. However, since an unfamiliar cultivator had suddenly come knocking on my door, it wasn't wrong for me to be so cautious. However, your method of concealing your aura should belong to a martial artist, right? To be able to completely seal your spiritual aura, I'm a little surprised," Xie Gu Tsang said in a non-committal manner. Then, he said with a slight sigh, "Speak, what is it? For the sake of my junior brother that I haven't seen for more than 10 years, I can listen first." Without inviting Ziyue to take a seat, Xie Gu Tsang picked up a cup of tea, took a sip, and said, "Junior was fortunate enough to obtain the purple qi visualization technique, which allowed me to embark on the path of immortal cultivation. However, the cultivation technique that I obtained was only the first volume. Therefore, I wish to ask Senior where I can obtain the second volume of the cultivation technique. In addition, I also wish to ask Senior if I can switch to other cultivation techniques in my situation." Bai Ziyue already knew from the old scholar that this senior brother of his had a strange personality. Therefore, he did not take it to heart. Instead, he hurriedly asked, "The purple qi divine observation technique seems to be a basic technique passed down by the Chaoyang sect. Even if it's a basic technique, it's still far more profound than ordinary cultivation technique. For you to be able to obtain this cultivation technique and even have some success in learning it, it can be considered a good opportunity. However, cultivation techniques are the foundation of cultivation. How can it be so easily obtained? Even if others have the second volume of the Purple Chi Divine Observation Technique, it's extremely unlikely that they would exchange it with you. Therefore, I advise you not to have too much hope. As for cultivating other cultivation techniques, it's naturally possible. However, are you willing to abandon your many years of cultivation and start from scratch? Saying this, Xie Gutsang looked at Ziyue with a smile that wasn't a smile. So to say, Senior also has no way? Ziyue's heart sank. This was also the problem that he had been worried about. If he couldn't even obtain anything from Xie Gutsang, then his hope of obtaining the cultivation technique would be even slimmer. That's not the case. Shaking his head, Xie Gutsang took another sip of tea and said, "The Chaoyang sect is located in the Misty Cloud Mountain, the Chaoyang Peak. It's even outside the Martial Kingdom. If you want to go to the Chaoyang sect to obtain the follow-up technique, it's almost impossible. Not to mention the dangers along the way, just the border between the two kingdoms is enough to make people shrink back. However, since you were able to obtain the Purple Chi Divine Observation Technique, it's naturally because within the Martial Kingdom, or even in the vicinity of the Wujiang County, there's someone who cultivates this cultivation technique. Coincidentally, I know that there's someone in the Imperial Court who cultivates this Purple Chi Divine Observation Technique." "Who?" Ziyue's originally calm state of mind immediately fluctuated intensely. "The new registrar, Li Hun. I remember that during the last Immortal Technique Assembly, he had introduced his cultivation technique. In addition, according to what I know, there's also a cultivation clan in the Heavenly Spirit County. The cultivation technique they cultivate is the Purple Chi Divine Observation Technique. It's said that their ancestor was originally an official disciple of the Chaoyang sect. However, he knew that he no longer had the ability to advance, so he returned to the Heavenly Spirit County and personally oversaw the clan." Xie Gutsang said unhurriedly. "Li Hun? Immortal Technique Assembly? Cultivation Clan? Which clan? Lin Clan?" Ziyue's heart was filled with joy as he hurriedly asked. Hearing Li Hun's name, Ziyue suddenly had a feeling of realization. Wasn't the Purple Chi Divine Observation Technique he obtained from Li Hun's brother, Li Su? For Li Hun to have this cultivation technique was a very normal thing. However, due to the difficulty of immortal techniques and the fact that Li Hun didn't reveal any methods, he simply didn't think in this direction. At the same time, the Immortal Technique Assembly mentioned by Xie Gutsang also made him extremely interested. Of course, the most important thing was still the matter of the Immortal Technique. If he couldn't obtain the second volume of the Purple Chi Divine Observation Technique from Li Hun, then he could only set his sights on the Cultivation Clan. However, when he thought of how powerful the Cultivation Clan was, he felt somewhat anxious. The Immortal Technique Assembly is actually a gathering for the local cultivation cultivators of our Wujiang County to interact with each other. The main purpose is to exchange some information or exchange some immortal Dao materials that one needs. Everyone takes what they need. Sometimes it lasts for 10 days to half a month, and sometimes it lasts for 1 or 2 months before it is organized. It is usually organized by the Wujiang County itinerant cultivator Old Wu, and the time and place are not fixed. As for the cultivation clan, it is not the Lin clan, but the D clan. The D clan is a cultivation clan. As he spoke, Xie Gutsang couldn't help but add, due to the return of the D clan's patriarch, the D clan's development in recent years has been extremely rapid, and the resources they have occupied have also increased greatly. Recently, the Wujiang County's various factions have been fighting, and the D clan's shadow is not absent. What is the relationship between the D clan and the Lin clan? Ziyue knew that the Lin clan was behind the Scorching Sun Gang. If the D clan also played a role in the conflict between the Scorching Sun Gang and the Nine Seal sect, then it could only be that they were on the Nine Seal sect's side. After all, this matter concerned the sect he belonged to, so he naturally had to ask. Cultivating the immortal art is difficult, and seeking immortality is even more difficult. Those who cultivate the immortal art need resources in order to cultivate and grow. Where do resources come from? Places with spirit chi, spirit fields, spirit springs, spirit mountains. There is a fixed amount, and there is a limit to the annual output. Naturally, there is a need to fight. The two cultivation clans are both located in the Sky Spirit County, and both need resources to develop and grow. You can imagine the relationship between the two sides. Wujiang County is a subsidiary county of the Sky Spirit County, so it is naturally a place where both sides compete. Xie Gutsang smiled faintly and said, "Thank you for your explanation, Senior." Ziyue finally understood. Compared to the two cultivation clans, both the Scorching Sun Gang and the Nine Seal sect were much weaker. Naturally, they could only be reduced to chess pieces. Behind the fierce competition, there was not only a conflict of interest between the cultivation clans, but also a contest between the two cultivation clans. By the way, when will the Immortal Art Assembly be held next time? I wonder if Senior can be the introducer and bring me along to participate? After thinking about it, Ziyue finally couldn't help but ask. Whether it was practicing martial arts or immortal art, it was always difficult to make progress behind closed doors. Now, although he had obtained some information about the follow-up to the Purple Chi visualization technique, he still needed to carefully consider how to plan it. This Immortal Art Assembly was an opportunity for a rogue cultivator like him to interact with other immortal art cultivators. An opportunity to come into contact with other immortal art cultivators and exchange what they lack. It was even an opportunity for him to further improve his strength. After all, other than immortal art, he was also lacking in other immortal art method. It's not impossible. For the sake of junior brother, I'm willing to be your introducer. However, whether you can obtain the recognition of the rogue cultivator Old Wu will depend on your own ability. Otherwise, even if you enter this time, you may not be able to enter the next time. By the way, there will be transactions. You can also prepare more spirit stones, talismans, or other things that will be of interest to immortal art cultivators. As for money and silver, you don't have to bring them. Those who can participate in this are all extremely wealthy people. Almost no one would be interested in this kind of yellow and white stuff. Thank you for your guidance, Senior, Ziyue quickly said excitedly. Chapter 169. Walking out of the General's Temple, Ziyue's mood was obviously much lighter, and he could not help but smile. This time, he had indeed gained a lot. Apart from knowing the deeper reason behind the conflict between the Scorching Sun Gang and the Nine Seals sect, the Immortal Spell Assembly had also given him a pleasant surprise. Of course, what excited him the most was that he had finally obtained information about the cultivation method of the Purple Chi visualization technique. Even though he knew very well that it would not be that easy to truly obtain the second volume of the Purple Chi visualization technique, and that Li Hun would definitely not give him the second volume of the technique so easily, this at least represented a kind of hope. It's not very appropriate to go straight to their door. Not to mention that it's not that easy to enter the government's compound, but if I do it so hastily, it's a big problem whether they will trust me. Therefore, it's best to wait until the Immortal Spell Assembly before making any plans. It's safer. Anyway, I've already waited for so long, I don't mind waiting for another 10 days or half a month. Ziyue thought to himself, and his mood calmed down a lot. While waiting for the Immortal Spell Assembly, he did not intend to be idle. He also needed to prepare some items that would be of interest to other cultivators of the Immortal Spell. As far as he was concerned, talismans were a rather suitable item. Of course, what he wanted to prepare this time was not those relatively low-level talismans in the 100 Talisman catalog. Instead, it was a type of spell transformation talisman. Compared to Qinghe Town, Wujiang County was much more prosperous. Naturally, the various items stored were more complete. Even though some of the items were harder to find, after a few hours of running around, Ziyue finally managed to prepare some of the items needed for talisman crafting. For this, he had spent almost 300 taels of silver, which was a lot of money. Just as he was about to rush back with the items, a shout came from the Qingyun tea house not far away. "Junior brother, come and have a cup of tea." Ziyue turned his head and saw that it was his cheap senior brother. Beside him were two other sect disciples whom he was familiar with. They happened to be the inner sect disciples Su Jin and Zhang Fang, who had searched for the assassins with him yesterday. Without hesitation, he replied, "Coming." Soon, he was seated in the tea house. Naturally, there was a waiter who served tea and a plate of 5 flour pastries. "Junior brother, what are the things in that big bag you're holding in your hand?" Tang Zhanfei curiously looked at the dark cloth bag beside Ziyue. There seemed to be a strange smell coming from it. Fortunately, the mouth was sealed by Ziyue, so the smell was not too strong, but it was inevitably a little pungent. "Just some toys. They're quite useful." Ziyue didn't know how to explain, so he gave a perfunctory answer. Then, he raised his eyebrows and asked, "Weren't you arranged to search for the assassin? Why are you still in the mood to drink tea here?" As for himself, he had only been arranged to join the search yesterday because he happened to be there at the right time. This morning, he said that he had a job to do, so he was free. Only then did he have the time to go to the General's Temple to meet the senior brother of the old scholar, Xie Gutsang. "We're just taking a break from work. We've been busy since this morning and didn't even have time to drink a sip of water. We just sat down in the tea house when we saw you, Brother Bai." Su Jin bitterly smiled and said helplessly, "About the assassin, do you have any leads?" Ziyue quickly asked. "Without a trace, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. How can there be any leads? If a third-rate master wants to hide, how can an ordinary person find him?" Zhang Fang shook his head and said with a serious face, "But this time, it's really big. You probably don't know, but this morning, another genius disciple was found dead in his own house. He was also cut in half by a knife. The method was basically the same as the assassin yesterday. It's very likely that it's the same person. Therefore, the gang plans to expand the search area. I think the entire Wujiang County will be searched." "Another one died? Who?" Ziyue was surprised. "One of the 7 young masters of Wujiang County, one of the 3 young masters of the Scorching Sun Gang, Zhu Mingxian," Su Jin quickly said from the side. Hearing this, Ziyue could not help but frown deeply. The 7 young masters of Wujiang County referred to the 7 martial artists in Wujiang County who had reached inner strength before the age of 25. Such people were very rare in the Scorching Sun Gang. There were only 3 of them, and they were named the 3 young masters of the Scorching Sun Gang. The 3 of them were Jiang He, Zhu Mingxian, and Xia Yunqiang. But now 2 of the 3 young masters of the Scorching Sun Gang were dead. It was too shocking. It's obvious that the Scorching Sun Gang is being targeted. Right now, even the Inner Force Realm martial artists in the sect are starting to panic. These are troubled times. Sighing, Zhang Fang's face showed a hint of seriousness. The gang has given out a mission. Anyone who finds clues about the assassin will be rewarded with 500 contribution points. Anyone who confirms the assassin's identity will be rewarded with 2,000 contribution points. Anyone who kills the assassin will be rewarded with 5,000 contribution points. Moreover, this reward is not limited to the gang. The gang has also put up a bounty outside, and it will be posted soon. This is a rare generosity from the gang, and it seems that the higher-ups are getting anxious. Tang Zhanfei said as well. "Is it possible that the 9 Seals sect is behind this?" Su Jin suddenly asked in a hushed voice. Most likely. Zhang Fang snorted and said. Bai Ziyu didn't respond, but in his heart, he suddenly thought of what he had learned from Xie Gu Tsang about the dispute between the Di clan and the Lin clan. Perhaps the Di family was behind this attack on the three young masters of the Scorching Sun Gang? Whether it is or not, we have to be careful for now, especially if we run into the Nine Seals sect. Even if we are in the city, we can attack directly if necessary. After all, branch leader Qin said that himself. Tang Zhanfei said with a rare serious look. Of course. I've been wanting to kill them for a long time. Zhang Fang and Su Jin nodded their heads in agreement, and they looked forward to it. Ziyue's heart tightened. It seemed that the conflict between the Scorching Sun Gang and the Nine Seals sect had become more intense. This battle was probably going to happen soon. By the way, junior brother, I haven't congratulated you on getting the title of Jianghu. Soon, Tang Zhanfei suddenly raised his eyebrows at Ziyue, congratulating him. Title of Jianghu? Ziyue was stunned, and then he thought of yesterday's youth martial gathering. Domineering Blade Hand Ziyue, this title is much more famous than your three-sword moves. Tang Zhanfei said helplessly. This title is indeed suitable for Brother Bai. Not only the domineering blade technique, but also the exquisite heaven-binding hand. It is indeed worthy of being called the domineering blade hand. Zhang Fang, who was at the side, also followed up with flattery. Yes, it seems that I have to work hard too. Even Brother Bai has not reached the internal refinement realm, but he already has the title of Jianghu. I have already started the internal refinement realm for more than a year, but I am still a beginner. I am ashamed, Su Jin said as he gulped down a mouthful of tea and said loudly, Treat, Brother Bai must treat. No problem. Bai Ziyu smiled and muttered, Domineering swordsman? Deep in his heart, he did not care. He still remembered that he had the title of Broken Blade Man in Qinghe Town. Outside of Qinghe Town, who would remember? The title of Domineering Blade Hand was only known in Wujiang County. Outside of Wujiang County, who would know? Even the so-called 7 young masters were the same. Only the white-clothed swordsman, who was known as a genius, was known in Tianling County. Back home, Ziyue could not wait to open the bag in his hand and take out the items inside. An entire piece of green wolf mutated beast skin, a small bottle of green wolf mutated beast blood essence, and dozens of supplementary materials. Ziyue's gaze swept over the materials one by one as he felt a rare nervousness in his heart. He was preparing to craft talismans this time, but it was not the low-level talismans that he had mentioned before. It was the spell transformation talisman. In the 100 Talisman catalog, because there was only the first volume, there were only 30 or so talismans recorded. Most of them were low-level talismans that did not have much of an effect. Furthermore, even the light body talisman, gold talisman, soul-subduing talisman that could originally display some power to the current Ziyue, they were no longer of much use. However, this did not mean that the 100 Talisman catalog was useless. Apart from talismans, the methods of drawing and refining talismans that were mentioned in the 100 Talisman catalog also piqued his interest. In particular, there was a talisman crafting method called spell transformation mentioned in the book. It gave him a great boost of inspiration. In his heart, he couldn't wait to rely on this method to transform the spells he cultivated into talismans. Then, he could throw them out in one go. Just thinking about such a scene made him feel extremely emotional. It must be known that the spells that Ziyue had mastered now were not weak. Not to mention the light body technique, spirit eye technique, and other non-combat spells, just the Thousand Wind Blade technique and Thunderfall technique were all powerful spells with extraordinary power. If he threw them out on a large scale, even a second-rate expert would be blasted into dregs, and even a first-rate expert would have to retreat. Unfortunately, although the 100 Talisman catalog had mentioned this talisman crafting method, there was no specific method to implement it. Thus, he could only dream about it previously. It was only when he killed the Channel Master Wu and saw the Spirit Beast Mystic Record, Spiritual Material Treasure, Zhou Chang's Minor Explanation of Restrictions, and other books related to immortality that he had obtained from him, that he had the first thought that perhaps he could realize the idea of transforming spells into talismans. Immediately after, he saw some explanations about the method of engraving restrictions in the jade slip that recorded the method of refining and upgrading the soul-gathering banner. It mentioned a sentence: "Immortal cultivation has 100 skills, and all skills are interrelated." Immediately, he was filled with gratitude. Chapter 170. The 100 arts of cultivation were all interconnected. However, this didn't mean that he could directly use the method of refining magic tools on talisman crafting. In essence, the two weren't the same. However, there must be some similarities in the way some of the techniques were used. Ziyue had long ago raised his talisman crafting technique to perfection. At the very least, his understanding of talisman crafting was extremely profound. Now that he thought about it and combined the two, he naturally figured out a feasible path. Of course, he wasn't sure if it could be realized. However, after coming into contact with Xie Gutsang and learning about the immortal spell assembly, he naturally needed to plan. In terms of financial resources, he was definitely inferior to those veteran cultivators. Whether it was gold, silver, or magic tools and spirit stones, they were all the same. If he wanted to exchange for the second volume of the Purple Chi visualization technique, or even other useful items, he could only think of his own methods. Talismans were the only thing he could take out. The stronger the spell, the higher the requirements for talisman paper, talisman ink, talisman brush, and even the person crafting the talisman. Ordinary paper is naturally not enough to turn the spell I can cast into a talisman and seal it inside. Only the fur of strange beasts and their bloodlines have shown some initial signs of extraordinariness. They innately carry spirit energy, which is why they can withstand even greater power. Ziyue stretched out his hand and spread out the azure wolf's hide. Then, he quickly took out various materials and processed them. Half an hour later, a green wolf mutated beast skin that was soft and smooth on the inside and full of spirituality appeared in front of him. He casually took out a cleansing talisman and activated it. In an instant, the entire azure wolf's hide appeared radiant. Anyone who saw it couldn't help but collect it or cut it into a coat and wear it close to their body. However, Ziyue didn't hesitate to take out a long saber and quickly slashed it. The saber flashed with incomparable precision. After a few breaths, the originally complete azure wolf's hide was cut into 79 pieces. There were still some leftover materials on the side that could only be discarded. Each piece was of uniform size. The front was the hide of a wolf, while the back was layers of azure wolf's fur. Because it was an exotic beast, each strand of its fur stood upright, and its hardness was quite good as well. It could even be used as brush hairs for a weasel hairbrush. Then, Ziyue began to process the blood essence of the green wolf. Like before, he crushed all kinds of rare auxiliary materials into powder and mixed them with the blood essence. 10 minutes later, the originally bright red blood turned into a small bottle of thick, dark red rune ink. Let's give it a try. Hopefully my idea will work. This way I'll have a few more trump cards. Ziyue took a deep breath. Without thinking about whether it would be a waste or not, he directly lit a tranquil incense at the side. Then, he took out a talisman brush. Something worth mentioning was that because Ziyue often hunted exotic beasts, the brush hairs of the talisman brush in his hand had long since been replaced by the sharp tail hairs of an exotic beast known as a short-tailed fox. Instantly, the talisman brush, which already had spirituality because of the brush holder, became even more spirituality. In terms of spirituality transmission, it also became smoother. At the same time, It could also increase the success rate of drawing talismans to a certain extent. In the room, the smoke of the incense surrounded Ziyue's mind, but it also completely calmed down. Suddenly, Ziyue opened his eyes abruptly, grabbed the talisman brush, and stuck it on the rune ink beside him. Then, he used his mental strength to fuse his hand with the talisman brush, as if they were a single entity. The surge of spiritual power caused the talisman brush's spirituality to increase greatly. The tip of the brush covered with rune ink was even more condensed and did not fall, as if there was a special force that locked it inside. Ziyue held the brush and hovered it in the air above the talisman paper, which was the azure wolf's hide that he had specially processed. Then it quickly fell. The first difficulty of the spell transformation talisman is to transform the spell structure into a talisman structure. The transformation process can't be done simply by copying. It needs a special kind of quantification. After all, if the carrier is different, even the spell structure will change accordingly. Thoughts about the transformation talisman flashed through Ziyue's mind, but his face appeared even more calm. In this aspect, he had already gained a certain level of understanding through a transformation method in Zhou Chang's minor explanation of restrictions. Now, what he needed to consider was how to implement it. In the beginning, he naturally chose to transform the spell that was relatively easier, the Spirit Flame spell. In the 100 Talisman Catalog, there was also the complete structure of the Spirit Flame Talisman, which allowed Ziyue to draw it accordingly. Of course, the Spirit Flame Talisman in the 100 Talisman Catalog was actually very different from the structure of his Spirit Flame spell. There were only similarities between the two in terms of name. From the beginning of the first stroke, Ziyue's arm hovered in the air and was extremely stable. The brush moved like dragons and snakes, and threads of talisman ink transformed into a complicated and mysterious rune structure. But very quickly, Ziyue stopped his movements, shook his head and laughed, and sighed. Failure! Even though this was within his expectations, it still made him somewhat disappointed. Continue. This time, there are some problems with the structure of the rune. Ziyue pondered over the reason for this failure, and very quickly came up with a solution. Only then did he move the brush again. The second time, the number of runes he drew was naturally more than the first time. But because of the transformation of the spirit chi, he still failed. Then the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time, Ziyue was not at all angry. Every time he made a mistake, he would pause for a period of time until he had thought through the reason for the mistake. Only then would he continue and draw again. An hour later, on the table, there was already the 15th piece of talisman paper. His brush moved like a dragon and snake, and his hand seemed to weigh 1,000 caddies. It appeared to be rather slow, but the imposing manner that was like a heavy mountain pressing down on his arm naturally emitted a unique aura. It was as if he was born with a sense of conviction. Finally, Ziyue drew the last stroke. In an instant, a special halo flashed on the green wolf beast skin. The originally lustrous and smooth green wolf beast skin instantly became somewhat shriveled. In an instant, wisps of spirit chi in the surrounding air were violently absorbed into the talisman. But soon, Ziyue's expression changed. Poof! A crisp sound resounded out as the talisman suddenly cracked apart and burned, and it emitted an unpleasant smell. It still failed, Ziyue said, but there was not the slightest trace of disappointment on his face. Instead, his eyes were very bright. Although it failed, it really proved the feasibility of this spiritual art transformation talisman. Now, as long as I find out the reason for this failure, I can truly realize this spiritual art transformation talisman in its entirety. Ziyue could not help but feel a little excited. He did not care about the unpleasant smell on the animal skin and began to examine it carefully. Shriveled, dry, without the slightest bit of spirit chi. And the moment the talisman was formed, the spirit chi that was drawn in, I understand. Ziyue was excited. At this moment, his thoughts were completely clear. The reason why the talisman failed was not because I made a mistake in the steps, but because there was insufficient spirit chi. When the talisman is formed, it must absorb the surrounding spirit chi to truly form it and be able to exert the power it should have. Previously, because the talisman I used was of a low grade, it only needed to absorb the spirit chi in the surrounding air to form the talisman and be able to exert its power. But now, the spiritual fire art transformation talisman that I drew required too much spirit chi. In a situation where there was no real replenishment, naturally, it could only absorb the spirit chi of the material itself. And since the spirit chi of the material was lacking, it naturally did not have the characteristics to carry the power of the talisman. Failure was inevitable. So, next, I only need to provide the spirit chi when the talisman was formed, and I can truly draw this spiritual fire art transformation talisman. When Ziyue thought of this, he almost immediately began to act. Next, he only needed to try again to prove whether his idea was correct. After cleaning the table again, Ziyue took out another green wolf beast skin and placed it on the table. He held the talisman brush in his hand and stuck the talisman ink on it. Calming his breath and concentrating his mind, he quickly calmed down under the dermic incense. He raised the brush and put it down. Done in one go. In just a few breaths of time, he had drawn an extremely complicated rune structure diagram. It's not over yet. At this time, Ziyue did not stop at all. The spirit chi in his body surged rapidly and entered the talisman through the rune pen. Buzz. At the same time, the talisman emitted a fiery red glimmer and absorbed by Ziyue's spiritual power in an instant. It trembled slightly and the spirit chi was withdrawn. Soon, it stopped moving. The talisman was done. It's done indeed. The rune structure is complex and complete. It is the spiritual fire arts spell structure that has been optimized to perfection. I just don't know how powerful this spiritual fire art transformation talisman will be. Ziyue picked up the spiritual fire art transformation talisman and looked at it carefully. He could not help but show an eager look on his face. As he thought of this, he did not hesitate and directly walked out of the room. Standing in the backyard, the spirit chi in Ziyue's body surged and instantly activated the spiritual fire art transformation talisman. In an instant, an orange-red flame condensed in the air. Then, with a whistling sound, it landed on a stone block not far away under his control. Boom! The flame was scorching hot and burned rapidly. It directly enveloped the entire stone block. In the blink of an eye, the originally hard stone block turned into boiling lava. It directly melted and spilled on the ground, forming a large pool. After a few breaths' time, the flame disappeared. The lava on the ground also gradually solidified and turned into a sparkling and translucent crystal that looked like gravel. This power is not much weaker than the spiritual flame technique that I cast myself. It has at least 80% of its power. Ziyue compared it in his heart and could not help but reveal a surprised look on his face. With this kind of power, perhaps one talisman would not have much effect. But if he activated 5, 10, or even more at the same time, that scene would be a disaster for the enemy. Chapter 171. Ziyue was reassured. He returned to his room and started drawing talismans again. 1 sheet, 2 sheets, 3 sheets. After 10 talismans, Ziyue finally felt that he could not hold on any longer. It was not just his mental strength. The spiritual energy in his body was almost depleted as well. His body was weak and his face was pale. In this way, Ziyue finally stopped drawing talismans, lit up the spirit convergence incense, and meditated to recover. In a private room of a restaurant, several martial artists sat facing each other. One of them had white hair and wrinkles on his forehead. He looked old and frail. He was Elder Chang of the Nine Seals sect. The other two were relatively younger, but their eyes shone with a sharp light. As they looked around, they gave off a sense of sharpness. They were not simple people either. The Nine Seals Sex Hall leader, Yu Yong, and the Vice Hall leader, Wu Huabin, were third-rate and above experts, especially Yu Yong, whose strength had reached second-rate. He was known as the invincible warrior of iron guts. I've just received news that the higher-ups are not satisfied with our progress and have sent people to disrupt our plans. This time, the two heroes of the Scorching Sun Gang had been killed by the higher-ups. Therefore, our original plan has to be brought forward. As Yu Yong spoke, he looked at the other two. Chang Weiyue and Wu Huabin nodded at the same time, listening intently. Elder Chang, you'd better stick to the original plan and cut off the Scorching Sun Gang's Green Hill Herb Garden and Green Hill Iron Mine. I think the Green Hill Herb Garden shouldn't be too difficult. Zhang Yong can do it directly. As for the Green Hill Iron Mine, there's only one Lu Tianyang. As he spoke, Yu Yong turned to look at Wu Huabin and said, Hall Master Wu, your task is a little more important. The Radiant Sun Gang's most important property is the Wu River Pier. I don't want you to completely destroy the Wu River Pier's operations, but you have to at least cause chaos there for a while. Don't worry, it's not difficult, Wu Huabin said confidently. I'll inform Zhang Yong. After hiding in the Scorching Sun Gang for more than 10 years, it's time for him to return to his true self. As for Lu Tianyang, I've been wanting to meet him. A sinister look appeared on Mao Weiyue's face. Then Hall Master Wu Huabin could not help but ask. Me? Naturally, we need to contain some of the Scorching Sun Gang's forces. Yu Yong smiled and whispered, I heard that there are demons on Mount Gutong? Young master, come and take a look. What happened to Lord He? Early in the morning, Ziyue had just gotten up when a series of violent knocks came from the door. What's wrong? Ziyue asked casually when he opened the door and saw that it was the maid, Xiao Tao. Master He started acting strange last night, but Xiao Ju and I didn't pay too much attention to it. We thought it was just normal nonsense. But this morning, Master He's place looked like it had been plowed. It was very scary, Xiao Tao said in a panic. Master He? Ziyue was stunned. Only then did he notice that there was something wrong with the way Xiao Tao addressed him. Grandpa He is the name we gave the puppy. Xiao Tao stuck out her tongue and said nervously. Let's go and take a look. Ziyue didn't pay much attention to it. Soon, he arrived at the pond in the front yard. The soil on the ground was overturned, and a fake mountain had collapsed. As the rocks rolled down, the ground looked even more messy. In the fake mountain, the puppy's head was still forcefully arching against the ground. A rock that weighed more than 100 kilograms was being arched by it. Soon, there was a loud bang and the rock rolled into the pond. A few golden carps were stunned by the impact of the falling rock. They flipped over and opened their mouths weakly. It's fine. Its bloodline has evolved. Ziyue only took a glance to determine the puppy's situation. It was a bloodline evolution. It had evolved from an ordinary animal to a mutated beast. He didn't expect the puppy to evolve at this time. However, when he thought about it, the puppy had been eating snake demon meat to nourish itself since it was 2 to 3 months old. After that, it didn't lack any flesh and blood. It also had the Spirit Dye Stone to replenish itself. It was very normal for it to evolve into a mutated beast. Bloodline evolution? Does that mean Lord He has become a mutated beast? Xiao Tao's face paled, and her body shrank. Mutated beasts were definitely a terrifying existence to ordinary people. News of mutated beasts hurting people could be heard almost every once in a while in Wujiang County. Don't worry. It won't dare to act rashly. Ziyue waved his hand, indicating for Xiao Tao to ignore it. He watched carefully from the side. He was also curious about how a wild animal could evolve into a mutated beast. After an hour, the puppy finally stopped to rest. At this time, its body was clearly much bigger than before. It could have been called a puppy, but now it could be called a big dog. It even looked a little majestic. Perhaps the evolution had consumed too much of its energy, so its current aura was extremely weak. As it panted, the breath it exhaled sounded very long. Layers of blood flowed on its body. In the blink of an eye, the blood evaporated into scabs due to the shocking heat emitted from its body. It looked even more miserable. After a while, the puppy finally regained its energy and struggled to get up. Seeing Ziue, the dog raised its head and seemed to be a little proud. The surging power made it clearly feel that it was strong. Its strong body made it feel bloated. Suddenly, it became a little arrogant. It barked and looked at Ziue with contempt. It was suddenly itching to have a go at by Ziue. Swaying its body slightly, the puppy walked over. Then, it tilted its head and looked at him with slanted eyes. Its mocking gaze was full of provocation. Ziue's face twitched. He kicked out his leg at lightning speed. "Go to the pond and wake up." A howl was heard. The puppy was kicked away and fell heavily into the pond. A day later, Ziue walked out of the house with a frown. Early in the morning, he received a transfer order. This transfer order was issued directly from the Internal Affairs Hall. It was a temporary recruitment. He was assigned to a small team to participate in a mission. However, he was not clear about the specific mission. Walking out of the house, Ziue walked all the way. Soon, he passed by the headquarters of the Scorching Sun Gang. He then stopped and walked into a shop called Old Zhang Tavern. Soon, he saw 2 or 3 disciples of the Scorching Sun Gang in casual clothes in the hall. "Wait first. There are more people coming." A middle-aged warrior glanced at Ziue and said lightly. Then, he continued to wait. Ziue did not say anything. He found a chair and sat down. After a while, several people came to Old Zhang Tavern in 2s and 3s. Ziue did not know if it was an illusion, but he felt that the 2 people who came later were looking at him with strange emotions hidden in their eyes. Thinking about the inexplicable nature of this mission, his face did not change, but he was more careful in his heart. "Almost everyone is here." Old Zhang closed the door. The middle-aged man who spoke before glanced at everyone and called out. Soon, a limping man with 2 hideous scars on his face walked out from the back of the tavern. He came to the door and closed the door. Old Zhang is an old man in the gang. Because of his injuries, he retired from the underworld. Now, with the help of the gang, he opened this tavern. In the future, if you are interested, you can come here more often to drink. Old Zhang's gourd wine is very good. The middle-aged man explained and did not forget to promote his wine. The others echoed a few words and nodded in assurance. Ziue looked on coldly and did not say anything. When these warriors had arrived, he had used the spirit eye technique to observe them. He found that among the 7 people, the middle-aged man was the strongest. He had reached the inner force realm. As for the others, they had all reached the inner refinement realm. On the contrary, he was the weakest. He was only at the peak of outer refinement. The ominous premonition in his heart suddenly became stronger. "All right, since everyone is here, I'll say a few words. You are all disciples who have been temporarily transferred here by the higher-up. You are from each of the halls. Some of you may not know me. Let me introduce myself. My surname is Wang Peng. I am the guardian of the Field Division's Hall Master Gong. You can call me Old Wang or Chief Wang." As he spoke, Wang Peng's face suddenly became serious. He continued, "As everyone knows, the conflict between the Scorching Sun Gang and the 9 Seals sect has become obvious. Our people have also received news that the 9 Seals sect has been on the move recently. It's obvious that they are preparing some conspiracy. The atmosphere in the gang has also become tense. However, no matter what conspiracy they have, the higher-ups have decided that we can't wait any longer. That's why we are on this mission." After he finished speaking, Wang Peng's gaze carefully scanned everyone. His gaze was so sharp that no one dared to look him in the eye. Ziue's face was calm. Only then did he realize what was going on. Previously, he had observed that there were a total of 8 people, including him. Each of them was wearing a variety of clothes. Some of them were wearing ordinary clothes, while others were wearing the uniform of the inner disciples of the sect. It was obvious that many of them were like him, and had been temporarily recruited. He felt a little relieved. He knew that even if someone wanted to scheme against him, it would only be in passing. The mission was the real key. After a while, seeing that there was no obvious panic on everyone's faces, Wang Peng's tone softened. He said, "To be on the safe side, I won't tell you the objective of the mission. Later, we will leave the city first. Once we are out of the city, all of you must listen to my orders. If anyone dares to disobey, don't blame me for showing no mercy. Don't worry, Guardian Wang. We are all veterans. Nothing will go wrong." One of them patted his chest and said confidently, I hope so." Wang Peng said in a low voice, "Let's go. Let's go." After he finished speaking, he turned around. Instead of walking out of the tavern, he ran to the backyard of the tavern. Chapter 172. Although they were puzzled, they did not ask and just followed behind Wang Peng. Soon, under Wang Peng's lead, everyone walked out from the back door of the tavern. After a few turns, the place gradually became remote and desolate. More than 10 minutes later, they appeared at the foot of the city wall of Wujiang County. "Guardian Wang, are we going to climb over the city wall?" With the height of the city wall, a warrior in his 30s raised his head and looked at the 5 to 6 meter tall city wall with a hint of hesitation. With his skills, it would be difficult for him to climb over such a height. Not climb over, but through. Wang Peng smiled and suddenly grabbed at the ground. With a lift, the hard wooden planks on the ground were removed. Instantly, a hole big enough for one person to pass through appeared in front of everyone. This hole was dug by a newly established gang 3 years ago. Because they were involved in the dirty business of abducting women and children, they were directly wiped out by the Scorching Sun gang. I was the one in charge of this at that time. After discovering this hole, I was careful and did not let anyone block it. Sure enough, it came in handy at this time. From here to our destination, we can save at least 2 hours of detour time. Moreover, it's safer and more concealed. As he spoke, Wang Peng did not hesitate and quickly jumped into the hole and went in. The others looked at each other and could only follow and go into the hole. Ziyue followed closely behind and went in. The inside of the hole was not stuffy, but it was inevitable that there was some corrosive smell of the soil, which made one feel a little nauseous. Fortunately, the hole was not long and was only about 10 meters long. Soon, Ziyue came out from the other side of the city wall. "Let's go." Wang Peng covered the hole again with wooden planks and shouted in a low voice. After confirming the direction, he quickly ran over. Ziyue glanced at his surroundings. There was a huge mountain in the distance. On the other side of the mountain, if he guessed correctly, it should be the southern district of the city. And he was now in the northern district of the city, which was within the Nine Seals sect's sphere of influence. Compared to the vicinity of Green Mountain, the terrain here was flatter. From afar, one could see some villages scattered all over the place. The group of people followed Wang Peng and ran along the city wall for a while. Then, they quickly rushed into a dense forest. "This direction, is it the Nine Seals Weapons Workshop?" Suddenly, an internal refinement martial artist asked in a low voice. Everyone's eyes flickered. The Nine Seal Weapons Workshop was an important production area for the Nine Seal sect. The weapons forged were not only supplied to the many disciples of the Nine Seal sect, but were also exported to Wujiang County. It was quite famous. If the Nine Seal Weapon Workshop was destroyed, it would be a huge loss to the Nine Seal sect. However, I heard that there's a third-rate expert in the Nine Seals Weapon Workshop. With just the few of us, someone whispered with a hesitant look on his face. "Don't talk nonsense." Wang Peng glanced sternly at the person who had spoken and quickly explained, "We have reliable information that the third-rate expert who was originally stationed here, the elder of the Nine Seals sect, Elder Chong, has secretly left for a period of time. This is the time when the Nine Seals weapon workshop is at its weakest. Let's end this quickly. Don't let me down. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." As he spoke, Wang Peng took the lead and quickly rushed to the hill in front. While running, Ziyue quickly sensed that two people were approaching. He glanced at them without batting an eyelid, and immediately recognized that these two were the ones who had been observing him with strange gazes. He immediately understood and secretly raised his vigilance. "Brother Bai, I was fortunate enough to see Brother Bai's skills during the youth tournament. I didn't expect to meet you here. I'm delighted. However, although Brother Bai's strength is not weak, he has not reached internal refinement. In this dangerous mission, he will definitely be at a disadvantage. So, if you don't mind, you can come with us brothers and we can take care of him," one of the younger-looking martialists said with a friendly look on his face. "Don't think too much. For a disciple with unlimited potential like Brother Bai, anyone would be tempted to befriend him and get to know him. The two of us just want to be friends with Brother Bai." On the other side, an older martial artist explained in a seemingly simple and honest manner. "Thank you, senior brothers, for your kindness," Ziyue said and was about to refuse. Suddenly, he changed his mind and said, "If that's the case, Mount Ziyue will accept your kindness. I'm still a little nervous about this mission." Of course. Brother Bai's talent is extraordinary. He has reached the peak of outer refinement at such a young age and is also the most outstanding disciple in the sect. To be able to befriend Brother Bai, we feel lucky. In the future, we might need Bai Shidi's help. The young martial artist spoke again and again, flattering Bai Ziyue with his glib tongue. "Senior brother, you're too polite. Now, I still need to rely on senior brothers. Oh, that's right, I wonder how I should address you two senior martial brothers, and where do you work? After this matter is over, Ziyue can find you to drink and eat together to express his gratitude," Bai Ziyue said with a grateful look on his face. "We're all trying to make a living in the law enforcement hall. We had nothing to do today, but we were inexplicably recruited for this mission. I don't know if we're lucky or unlucky. But I think being able to meet Brother Bai is a great fortune amidst the misfortune. Oh right, I'm Luo Su. The other is my senior brother, Fong Yuan," the young man quickly explained. Ziyue couldn't help but look at Fong Yuan. The other party immediately returned a stiff smile. "We're here." At this moment, a low shout came from the front. Immediately, everyone's heart jumped and they all became silent. Their gazes became vigilant and careful. Nine Seal Weapon Workshop is only about 10 li away from June Mountain Iron Mine. Once there's a commotion in the workshop, it will definitely alert the Nine Seal sect disciples at June Mountain Iron Mine. For a distance of 10 li, an expert would only need 15 minutes to rush over. Thus, there isn't much time left for us. We have to end this quickly. Standing at the edge of the mountain, Wang Peng looked down at the continuous rows of wooden buildings. Thick smoke was coming out from the wooden buildings. Within the wooden house, the clanging sounds of metal being hammered continuously rang out. It appeared to be in full swing. 15 minutes, we have to completely annihilate the Nine Seal Weapon Workshop below in 15 minutes. With that, Wang Peng growled, "Kill!" Then, like an eagle flying, they quickly pounced towards the continuous rows of buildings. "Kill!" The others also let out a low growl. All of them drew their weapons and charged over with murderous intent. "Brother Bai, follow me," Luo Su called out. As he pounced, his body was nimble like a nimble ape. It was very delicate and showed off his excellent footwork. Compared to him, Fong Yuan's speed was faster. But perhaps because his body was bigger and more majestic, when he stepped on the ground, there would be muffled sounds. His momentum was surging like an elephant moving recklessly. Enemy attack. Although Ziue and the others did not cause much of a commotion, 7 to 8 practitioners rushed out together at an extremely fast speed. Naturally, they were very conspicuous and were almost instantly discovered by the sentries. In an instant, he threw out a ball of fire and it landed on a straw hut not far away from him. Whoosh! The wind blew the fire and the grass hut quickly ignited. In the blink of an eye, it spread and made the fire even more vigorous. At the same time, a thick smoke rose from the straw hut. It was so thick that it was frightening. There was also a faint stench coming from the smoke. Signal smoke. The signal smoke that was necessary to transmit information. Once it started burning, the smoke would rise to a height of at least 100 meters. It was enough for the disciples in June Mountains or mine to detect it. It would not take long before the 9 Seal sect disciples came to rescue them. Kill! Don't leave a single one alive! Wang Ping shouted. With a sweep of his blade, he directly killed the sentries. Then, without stopping, he rushed into a weapon workshop. The sounds of fighting could be heard in the blink of an eye. Soon, Bai Ziue and the rest of the group also approached and immediately began to attack. Figures flashed and the shouts were concentrated. The whistling of the bellows and the sound of the blacksmiths instantly disappeared. Only the panicked shouts could be heard from time to time. Ziue slashed with his blade, and a practitioner wearing the 9 Seal sect disciples' uniform immediately screamed and fell to the ground. Luo Su quickly approached and finished off the man with another slash. Then, he shouted, "Brother Bai, let's enter from this door." Okay. Ziue glanced at the battlefield. Without much hesitation, he rushed into the door. Then, with a sweep of his eyes, he immediately saw 5 or 6 strong men, each holding a sword and saber, rushing forward quickly. These strong men were all naked and their muscles were extremely strong. At this moment, all of them had fierce eyes and attacked without thinking. "Humph, you're courting death." Luo Su sneered and flew out at a speed faster than Bai Ziue's. Then, he slashed down with his sword. Puff! The person who was closest to the front didn't even have time to scream before he was split into 2 halves. He couldn't be more dead than he already was. Just as the others were about to attack, they heard a thud. A violent body stomped on the solid ground, causing the soil to splatter and a large part of the ground to sink. Then, like a flash of lightning, he rushed to Luo Su. His long saber was like silver as it swept out. The saber light swept out and the force was like thunder. It was like rolling dust that could destroy any obstacle. Chapter 173. Puff, puff, puff. 3 burly men were unable to dodge in time and were directly cut into 2 halves at the waist. There were even 2 people who managed to put their weapons in front of them in time, but they were unable to block the attack at all. They were sent flying like rags. The surging strength was like hitting a cow through a mountain, rushing into their bodies through their weapons and into their lungs. As the rumbling sounds rang out, their lungs were directly ruptured. In an instant, these 2 people spat out blood and collapsed on the ground, losing all signs of life. At this moment, it was Fang Yuan who made his move. His strength had already reached the late stage of internal refinement and was close to the peak. His strength was violent and his strength was extremely high. Not to mention these martial artists, who were only at the outer refinement realm, even internal refinement realm martial artists would not be able to withstand his attack. Spirit energy plus 345, plus 341, plus 484, plus 246, plus 471, plus 841. Looking at the unceasing increase in spirit energy, Ziue's expression was calm, but he was somewhat excited inwardly. The new race member replied. His gains from this operation were probably not small. In addition, it was worth mentioning that Ziue also discovered that as his strength increased, the range of his spirit energy absorption was gradually expanding. For example, at the start, Only when living creatures within 10 meters of him died would his spirit energy increase. Now, this distance had increased by 3 times, reaching 30 meters. This caused the speed of his spirit energy increase by a large margin. Especially in the current situation where a chaotic battle had erupted, continue to charge. Russell and Fong Yuan glanced at each other and shouted, once again going deeper in. One was nimble while the other was berserk, their strength was not weak. Even if they occasionally met 1 or 2 experts, they could quickly crush them. Ziyue followed behind them, looking like he was being taken care of. Soon, they reached the innermost part of the cave. A 2-meter-tall, burly man with a ferocious look in his eyes instantly pounced on them. Kill! With a fierce shout, Russell took the lead, his sword light like specks of starlight rapidly piercing over. At the same time, Fong Yuan's body shook. His broad and thick saber quickly swung and fiercely chopped down like a mountain. Scram! The burly man's eyes widened like copper bells. The 2-meter-long broadsword in his hand instantly swept out. Bang! With a loud sound, the large saber knocked away Luo Su's sword and collided with Fong Yuan's broad saber. Such power! Fong Yuan's expression changed as he retreated 3 to 4 steps. In terms of true strength, he was actually at a disadvantage. Humph! However, the burly man was unable to gain any advantage. He groaned as traces of blood faintly seeped out from the corner of his mouth. Clearly, he had suffered a loss in the previous exchange. In terms of strength, because of his strong body, he was naturally much stronger than ordinary people. Thus, even though he had just stepped into internal refinement not long ago, he was already superior to Fong Yuan, who was at the late stage of internal refinement. However, Fong Yuan's martial path attainment was higher, so naturally his control over the strength in his body was much better than his. The strength penetrated his body and directly entered his organs, causing them to be injured. You are strong, but you still have to die. Fong Yuan's footsteps paused as he slightly adjusted his stance. His gaze suddenly burst out with a bright light. The blade once again moved horizontally as his body rotated half a step, like a spiral. Whoosh whoosh. The hurricane moved as if the whole world was about to be cut into 2 by this blade. Whirlwind blade. The burly man's expression changed as he quickly raised his saber to block. Clang. The burly man's body paused as a surge of qi and blood surged up, causing him to feel extremely uncomfortable. After suppressing his qi and blood with great difficulty, another blade came down. His organs were also continuously attacked, like a large bell or drum, fiercely hammering at his heart and lungs. Clang! 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 After one blade came another. Under the whirlwind blade, Fong Yuan's entire body was like a spiral, extremely fast. The burly man kept raising his long saber in an attempt to block. However, every time he blocked, he would spit out a mouthful of blood. His internal organs felt as if they were being strangled, constantly rupturing and shattering. Finally, after barely blocking 4 to 5 blades, his body shook violently. He spat out a mouthful of blood and flesh that contained the remnants of his organs. His body stiffened as his gaze suddenly became unfocused, becoming incomparably empty. Bam! With a loud bang, his body fell backward, and he could no longer get up. When martial artists fight, strength is not the only thing that matters. Sneering, Fong Yuan also let out a sigh of relief. His gaze then landed on Luo Su and Ziyue, who had been standing beside him all along. At this moment, Luo Su also quietly approached Ziyue, smiling as he said, "Brother Bai, what? You don't intend to continue acting, are you ready to fight?" Ziyue looked over with a faint smile. He had already sensed that something was wrong with these two. Earlier, he was only cooperating to see what tricks they had up their sleeve. But now it was obvious that these two were going to reveal their true intentions. Luo Su's expression changed, while Fong Yuan's gaze also focused. "Brother Bai, what do you mean? I only want to borrow something from you while there are fewer people here. You have really misunderstood me. Luo Su's face turned red, as if he had been wronged. Oh? What is it? Ziyue cooperated and asked. The head on your neck. Luo Su's eyes stared, his expression suddenly becoming ferocious and tyrannical. His long sword turned into a flash of lightning, stabbing out with extreme speed. Vaguely, there seemed to be specks of cold light spurting out from the tip of the sword, causing the air near the tip to slightly tremble and distort. This sword strike was extremely fast. Sigh, you still made a move in the end. But in the end, you are asking for trouble. Ziyue let out a sigh, his long saber swept up like the white clouds in the sky, violently rumbling. The moment it pressed down, the surrounding air let out an explosive sound. Boom! The long sword was instantly sent flying, and the long saber directly crushed down like a hot knife through butter. Puff! With a crisp sound, a head flew into the sky. With a bang, it landed on the ground, and with a roll, it rolled towards Fang Yuan, coincidentally looking straight at him. That pair of unclosed eyes seemed to be filled with deep doubt and disbelief. How can this be? Fang Yuan's expression changed, almost unable to believe his own eyes. Luo Su died? In fact, before he could even react, he was already dead. Moreover, he died at the hands of someone who was far weaker than him? In this world, nothing is impossible, Ziyue said, but his body was like a wisp of smoke, rapidly moving forward. His feet stepped on the ground, light as if they were soundless, leaving no traces behind, graceful and natural. At this moment, he was using his light body technique, 7 stars chasing moon. Even if he had not reached the entry stage of this light body technique, with the support of his inner strength, his speed was much faster than before. Inner refinement stage? No, you are at the inner strength stage. Fang Yuan's heart was beating wildly, his face instantly turning pale. He could not have imagined that Ziyue's true strength was far beyond his expectations. Not only was he not at the outer refinement peak stage, he had even surpassed the inner refinement stage, reaching the inner strength stage. Inner strength stage, the body has inner strength, and the strength is beyond imagination. It is not something an outer refinement and inner refinement martial artist can compare to. No matter how confident he was, he knew he was far from being a match for a martial artist of this level. Almost without thinking, he turned around and fled. Ziyue, you can't kill me. If you kill me, you won't be able to escape responsibility, Fang Yuan shouted as he fled. Noisy! Ziyue's body was like lightning, approaching Fang Yuan in the blink of an eye, and then stabbing out like lightning. Puff! In an instant, it deeply penetrated his back. Fang Yuan's body stiffened, turning around wanting to say something, but when he opened his mouth, only blood gushed out, and he could not make any sound. If you knew this day would come, why did you do it in the first place? Ziyue's blade light turned, completely ending his life, and then pulled out the blade light. Spirit energy plus 1523. His eyes flashed with the increase in spirit energy. Seeing that his spirit energy had increased to almost 60,000 points in such a short period of time, his expression was calm. After killing Fang Yuan, his body did not stop at all, instantly pouncing, directly rushing towards a tightly shut door. Long before entering this hall, he had already sensed that there was another person in this room. Even though his breathing was extremely light, like a mosquito, and his aura was restrained as much as possible. However, it still couldn't escape his sharp senses. The blade light slashed. Boom! That tightly shut door suddenly burst open. In an instant, the scene inside was revealed in front of him. Countless weapons were displayed in a disorderly manner, shining with cold light. Long blades, sharp swords, war hammers, spears, halberds, everything that one could think of. This was one of the weapon storage warehouses of Nine Seals Weapon Workshop. However, the moment Ziyue was about to step into the room, a total of 3 spears, like sharp arrows, directly shot towards him. Xiu's expression did not change, and his long blade flashed past like a graceful swan. Only a clanging sound could be heard, and the 3 spears were immediately sent flying by him. But the moment he sent the spears flying, a somewhat fat body, like a wild goose, pounced at him rapidly. A thick and heavy long blade flashed past, quickly slashing down. "If you had left, I wouldn't have wanted to find trouble with you. But you want to create trouble, then don't blame me." A cold voice could be heard. "Humph." Xiu snorted, and the blade light swept again, directly blocking the attack. Bang! A sound of weapons clashing. Xiu's hand lightened. His long blade was broken. His expression changed, and Xiu instantly reacted, retreating at an even faster speed than when he came. Boom! The door sill cracked, and a deep blade mark was left on the ground. Chapter 174. What a sharp saber! Xiu's eyes flashed with brilliance. In a battle between warriors, strength, attainment level, speed, martial arts, and weapons were all crucial factors that determined victory or defeat. In terms of weapons, because he had the experience of having his saber broken in the early days, the long saber he chose was actually not bad. It was made of fine iron and was forged into hardness. Compared to the standard long saber, it was much better. But now, it was easily broken by this 9-seal sect steward. It was enough to show that the sharpness of the opponent's saber was definitely a top-notch saber, a famed saber. In terms of hardness, Xiu estimated that it was almost as hard as his flying sword, a celestial artifact. This is the saber that our battle hall's hall master is going to replace. The entire saber is made of meteorites that fell from the sky and mixed with many spiritual materials. Not to mention your ordinary saber, it is not any worse than your gang leader's hollow bright saber. This saber has been carefully forged for 49 days and has only been completed for 2 days. It is your honor to be able to die under this saber. The steward sneered, his eyes filled with coldness. He had heard Fang Yuan's shout earlier and knew that Xiu's strength was not simple. He was a rare inner strength realm warrior. But so what? His strength was not weak and was at the peak of inner refinement. Otherwise, he would not have been able to secure his position as the steward of the weapon workshop. He even had a peerless famed saber in his hand and was confident that he could kill even an inner strength realm warrior. This saber is not bad. But it's already mine. The more Xiu looked at it, the more satisfied he felt. He smiled, but his gaze suddenly turned cold. The next moment, his body shot forward and rapidly approached. Die! The 9-seal sect steward roared and raised his saber again, about to strike. But the moment the saber was about to land, a trace of doubt flashed across his eyes. Where was he? Although the saber is good, it still depends on who is wielding it to unleash its power. You are still lacking a little. Just as he heard those words clearly, he suddenly felt an incomparable pain in his neck. From the corner of his eyes, he saw a broken saber deeply embedded into his neck. It was as if it had chopped off his entire head. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he suddenly let go of his last breath and fell into endless darkness. It is indeed a good saber. Xiu stretched out his hand and grabbed the saber. The weight of the saber made him rejoice. Then, he looked at the saber. It was pitch black, but it had an extremely black light, making it seem dazzling. With a flick of his wrist, the blade vibrated, cutting through the air with a slight buzzing sound. This saber weighs about 270 kilograms, and is 3 feet and 7 inches long. The blade is wide and thick, and the edge is sharp. Not only is its hardness shocking, but the flexibility of the blade is also not weak. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a peerless saber, a treasured saber. At least for the current me, it was enough. If it's comparable to the sect leader's clear emptiness blade, it should be enough for him to become a first-class expert. Ziyue played with the saber for a while, unable to put it down. Although this saber weighed close to 300 kilograms, it was not a problem for him at all. His tyrant saber technique required such a heavy saber to be able to unleash more power. Although the previous saber was easy to use, it was still a little light. Then, he stepped into the storage room. Ziyue did not care about the sabers, swords, and other weapons on the ground. Most of these weapons were standard weapons. At most, they could be exchanged for 10 or 20 taels of silver. If he could keep them safely, he would not give them up. However, it was not the right time to do so during the battle. Therefore, Ziyue directly chose a few weapons that were specially placed. They were of a higher class and were better than his previous saber. He took a cloth bag, carried it on his back, and walked out. Of course, he would not let go of the money and other things on the corpses on the ground. There's no time. Retreat. Suddenly, a loud roar could be faintly heard from the depths of the weapons workshop. Then, Ziyue heard the sound of a house collapsing. Kiki. One after another, torches were thrown onto the thatch on the roof. The flames were instantly ignited and spread rapidly. Ziyue quickly stopped his search. He quickly ran out of the courtyard and soon came to a small path. He saw a figure carrying a large pile of things on his back. He was running out quickly and madly in the direction he came from. Without hesitation, Ziyue quickly followed. 4 or 5 minutes later, the group stopped on a hillside. It seems that only the 4 of us came back alive. The others have already died in this operation. Wang Peng turned back and looked in the direction of the 9 Seals weapons workshop. The fire was spreading, but no one else appeared. After all, the 9 Seals sect is not a small force. Even in the weapons workshop, there are many experts. To be able to achieve such results is already not bad. One of the martial artists who had been slashed in the chest said in a disappointed tone. However, his tone corresponded to the mountain-like backpack on his back. There were obviously many weapons and money. Oh right, I remember that senior brother Fang Yuan and junior brother Luo Su went to the courtyard at the edge with you. Why didn't they come back, but you? Suddenly, a martial artist who looked somewhat thin and weak looked at Ziyue without blinking. Compared to the 2 powerful inner refinement martial artists, Ziyue, an outer refinement peak stage martial artist, should have a lower chance of survival. We were unlucky and met a steward of the 9 Seals weapons workshop. Brother Luo and brother Fang fought with their lives, but only managed to injure the steward. Because I was the weakest, I managed to keep my life. Ziyue calmly replied. Is that so? He still had some doubts in his heart. Be it Luo Su or Fang Yuan, they were not the kind of people who would sacrifice themselves for others. If that steward's strength was really strong, the first thing they would have done would have been to retreat and not fight to the death. Otherwise, do you think I was the one who harmed them? Ziyue looked over with a cold gaze. That cold gaze instantly caused that person's heart to turn cold. There was actually some fear in that person's heart. His heart went blank for a moment before a wave of anger surged up. He was a middle-stage inner refinement martial artist. How could he be afraid of an outer refinement martial artist? Alright, no matter what, this operation has ended perfectly. If we wait any longer, the experts left behind at Junshan Iron Mine will rush over. Let's leave quickly. Wang Peng shouted and glared at Ziyue and Luo Su. He quickly turned around and rushed back the way he came. The others also moved quickly, walking in this dense forest as if they were walking on flat ground. Naturally, Ziyue didn't say anything else and followed him quietly. Half an hour later, Ziyue's group smoothly returned to the city wall and once again entered the city wall. At this time, everyone finally let out a sigh of relief and relaxed. Alright, the mission is over. Everyone who participated will have 300 contribution points recorded in the book. You can go to the Internal Affairs Hall to collect them one day later. You can all disperse now. Of course, if you don't have any channels to sell your gains, you can come to me. I will definitely give you a fair price. Wang Ping also relaxed his vigilance at this time and said with a smile, "Thank you for your kind intentions, Protector Wang. I have a close friend who happens to have channels in this area. I won't stay any longer. Goodbye. Protector Wang, we will meet again someday." The others spoke one after another and impatiently turned around to leave. "Protector Wang, goodbye." Ziyue also cupped his hands and was about to leave when he was stopped by Wang Ping. "I wonder what Protector Wang means?" Ziyue's heart tightened as he stared at Wang Ping. You don't need to be nervous. To an experienced person like me, Fang Yuan and Luo Su only need to open their mouths, and I know what they mean. But I didn't expect that the one who came back alive would be you. You do have some ability. Of course, I don't care what grudges you have between you, and I can't care. But I am quite interested in the saber in your hand. Name a price, I want it. Wang Ping chuckled, his gaze unwavering as he sized up Ziyue's waist and the long saber in its scabbard. His eyes had always been extremely sharp. Even though only the saber handle was exposed, he could see that this saber was extraordinary. This saber was obviously Ziyue's gain from the weapon workshop this time. It could be considered a top-quality saber, and would not be inferior to the saber in his hand. He couldn't help but be tempted. Collecting weapons had always been his hobby. I also like this saber and don't want to sell it. Ziyue shook his head and said, "According to what I know, you weren't originally part of this mission. That is to say, you were temporarily placed in. I think you should be very clear on this point. To be able to do this, your status must not be low. If you are willing to sell this saber to me, I am willing to take action and help you solve the problem behind this. I think this favor should be enough." Wang Ping spoke calmly, his face revealing a confident expression. He was only an outer forging martial artist. Even if his talent was good and he was one of the 10 most outstanding disciples of the gang every 3 years, he still hadn't grown up. He also didn't have a backer. It would be very difficult for him to offend the influential figures of the gang. In his opinion, this condition was enough to tempt Ziyue. He was even willing to hand over the saber with both hands. "There is no need." Ziyue refused again. Wang Peng's smile froze as he said in disbelief, "You are not afraid of offending me after offending a powerful person in the sect? You have to know that it is very easy for me to make things difficult for you. I only know that if I don't want to give away something that belongs to me, no one can take it away." Ziyue's face was calm, but there was a faint divine light in his eyes as he said softly, "Whoever offends me will not have a good time." Chapter 175. Strength was always the standard to measure a person's strength. It could be money, it could be power, and it could even be force. Ziyue had struggled to survive in this world for many years and had finally acquired a certain level of strength. The martial path realm of the inner strength realm combined with the tyrant blade technique at the perfection realm made it extremely overbearing and unparalleled. It was enough for him to have an absolute advantage when facing any cultivator of the same realm. Of course, this included Wang Ping. Immortal spell level 5 of the mortal realm, combined with the mid-grade Azure Light Sword, the mid-grade Soul Amassing Banner, the complete level of the Thousand Mountain Ice Blade technique, and the Thunder Fall technique. He could even defeat a third-rate master. That was why he was so confident and dared to say those words in such a calm manner. Since he was not even afraid of offending the sect elders, why would he need to offend one more? Even if he could not, he could just leave after killing Wang Ping. After all, he had already acquired the Inner Force Mantra, the Purple Mansion creation skill, so he did not have to worry about his future cultivation. "You're really not selling?" Wang Ping raised his eyebrows in surprise. Could it be that there was someone behind Ziyue? Seeing that Ziyue was still unwilling to sell, he could only sigh regretfully and say, "If that's the case, I won't force you. But if you change your mind, you can come to me anytime." I will definitely give you a satisfactory price. He really did not have the intention of robbing or coercing him. He just liked to collect weapons, but he would not do anything that would make things difficult for him just for one weapon. After all, Ziyue was also a disciple of the sect. His identity was different. Of course, if he knew that the long blade in Ziyue's hand was not the best of the best, but a treasured blade that was even better than the famed blades. It was made by the Nine Seal Sect's Hall of Battle after a long period of refining with precious materials. It was as good as the Kongming blade in the hands of Jiang Tao, the leader of the Scorching Sun Gang. Perhaps his thoughts would be completely different. That day won't come. Bai Ziyue said indifferently. He cupped his hands and said, "Goodbye." Then, he left. Ziyue didn't know if Wang Ping had seen through his killing intent, but since the other party didn't force him, he naturally wouldn't pay too much attention to it. If it wasn't necessary, he didn't want to really make a move and cause a big commotion. Not to mention that it would be more convenient for him to cultivate in the future by relying on a large force, and he would also have more resources and martial skills. However, the immortal arts gathering that was about to begin was also the reason why he was unwilling to give up. After all, the immortal spell assembly this time was related to his future cultivation in the immortal spell Dao. He had to participate and didn't want to miss it. However, the matter between Luo Su and Fang Yuan, if I am not wrong, it should be related to that disciplinary hall elder. Then, Ziyue thought of this inexplicable mission and the killing intent in the mission. He had already heard that Luo Su and Fang Yuan were both law enforcement hall disciples, and according to what he knew, the outstanding disciple Gong Xinghua, who died in the Green Mountain earlier, was the grandnephew of the Scorching Sun Gang's elder, Gong Changxing. In addition, he suddenly heard that Huang Guangzhou, who had escaped the calamity, had mysteriously died, and that Internal Affairs Hall Steward, who was related to this mission, had also mysteriously disappeared. Naturally, he had his guesses. The other party wanted everyone related to that mission to be buried with them. As the sole survivor, Ziyue naturally couldn't escape the punishment. Gong Changxing is an elder in the gang. It is said that his strength far surpasses Nie Yunhao, who is also an elder, and has already reached the level of a second-rate expert. With my current strength, I can't do anything about it. Fortunately, with his status, he can't really do it himself. At most, he can send someone like Fang Yuan, who has undergone internal refinement, or an inner strength expert. As for third-rate experts, even if Gong Changxing is an elder, he can't order them around. Of course, even if he really sends out third-rate experts, they won't be much of a threat to me. If they really come, I'll just kill them one by one. I want to see how many people he can send out. Ziyue thought in his heart, his eyes shining brightly. However, all of this is only temporary. As long as I have a bit more time, I'll be able to gain a basic understanding of the Violet Palace creation art, or obtain the Purple Chi visualization divine arts follow-up cultivation method. Then, if he wants to do anything to me, he'll have to see if I agree or not. No matter how magnanimous a person was, they would feel uncomfortable after being schemed against, let alone by Ziyue, who was not a magnanimous person. He had always believed in an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. If he didn't have enough strength, he could only choose to endure. But if he had enough strength, he wouldn't just sit and wait for death. A great man once said, "For the sake of great sacrifice, I dare to change the sun and the moon." Although he couldn't be as magnanimous as a great man, he had the determination to drag down the emperor even at the cost of his own life. Moreover, Elder Gong Changxing was only a high-ranking member of a small local gang. The bustling crowd and the clamor of the streets brought Ziyue back to his senses. Then, a trace of astonishment appeared on his face. On the streets there were people from all walks of life. News usually spread very quickly. Although it was normal to talk about trivial matters, once something big happened in the Jianghu, it would explode in the crowd, and everyone would fight to discuss it. At this moment it was exactly so. The war between the Scorching Sun Gang and the Nine Seals Gang has finally begun. This time, it's said that the Nine Seals Gang has made a big move. At the same time, they've attacked in many ways. They've directly destroyed the Scorching Sun Gang's Green Mountain Iron Mine and the Green Mountain Herb Garden. Your news isn't shocking enough. I've just come from the Wu River Pier. Can you believe it? In broad daylight, there are water bandits on the shore of the pier, wantonly destroying the surrounding ships. You know, the Wu River Pier has always been the property of the Scorching Sun Gang. It's obvious who these water bandits are. Which water bandits are they? Aren't they afraid of the Scorching Sun Gang's revenge? After all, the Scorching Sun Gang is the biggest gang in the area. Even if they can't take down the Nine Seals Gang, the average water bandits wouldn't dare to provoke them. Since they've already attacked, do you think they'll be afraid? Not to mention, it's not certain if the people causing trouble this time are water bandits. After all, the Wu River Pier is related to the operation of the docks in the entire Wu County. It's also managed by the government. Once exposed, they'll be besieged by both the government and the Scorching Sun Gang. Ziyue couldn't help but frown when the discussion reached his ears in twos and threes. Unfavorable news came out one after another. People couldn't help but wonder if the Scorching Sun Gang and the Nine Seals Gang could really win this war. The Scorching Sun Gang has as many experts as there are clouds in the sky. They wouldn't let such a thing happen, would they? Whether it's the Green Mountain Herb Garden or the Green Mountain Iron Mine, they're not far from the city. Not to mention the Qing River Pier. The Scorching Sun Gang can send reinforcements at any time. Someone couldn't help but question. Someone laughed coldly and said, "This is where the Nine Seals Gang's brilliance lies." It's said that a tiger demon suddenly went berserk and broke into the Jiang family castle not far from Wu County. The Jiang family castle is the home of the Scorching Sun Gang's leader, Jiang Tao's family. Naturally, they couldn't afford to lose it. Therefore, almost all the experts in the Scorching Sun Gang rushed to deal with the tiger demon. This allowed the Nine Seals Gang to succeed in their sneak attack and gain the upper hand. Hearing this, everyone gasped in amazement. It would be strange if the Scorching Sun Gang didn't get into trouble with such a series of tactics. Of course, the Scorching Sun Gang is after all the biggest gang in the city. I'm guessing that there will be news of a counterattack soon. When that time comes, it's possible that both sides will fight in the city. It's best that we don't go out during this period of time. Otherwise, if we're not careful and get caught in the crossfire, we'll lose more than we gain. Someone couldn't help but advise. Suddenly, everyone's hearts tightened. Soon, people scattered in twos and threes, heading back to their homes. The herb garden of Qingshan has been destroyed? Ziyue found it hard to believe. But as he walked on the street, he couldn't help but believe it because of the many discussions. He thought of old Qian in the herb garden of Qingshan. He escaped because he didn't join the Qingshan expedition. But this time, he could only wish him good luck. This time, the matter has become so big. I wonder how the higher-ups of the gang will deal with it. Ziyue thought for a while, but didn't think too much about it. These things weren't something he could worry about. The only thing he could do was wait. When he returned home, Bai Ziyue took the opportunity to carefully count his gains this time. 7 or 8 weapons, mainly long sabers and long swords. There's no lack of fine quality among them. Ziyue first looked at the many weapons in his backpack. There were both long sabers and long swords, and each of them was quite extraordinary. Even if they couldn't be compared to some fine weapons, they were still worth a lot. Not to mention, among these few weapons there were also 2 that were roughly at the level of fine quality. Each of them could be sold for more than 500 taels of silver. In this way, I've gained about 2,000 taels of silver from these weapons alone, plus the silver I found from those people. Ziyue calculated, and a smile appeared on his face. 2,800 taels of silver. That was a lot of silver. Moreover, this didn't include the superb treasured saber in his hand. This treasured saber could be called a priceless treasure. If it was taken out for auction, there would definitely be many masters willing to spend more than 50,000 taels of silver to buy it. Looking at the long saber in his hand again, Ziyue pulled it out slightly. The saber came out of the sheath, and the dark saber faintly flashed with a fluorescent light. The saber, which was almost 300 pounds, was as light as a feather in his hand. Puff! Without much effort, Ziyue gently chopped down, and a wooden chair was directly cut in two. The internal force in his body surged. Buzz! The saber trembled, and without any obstruction, the internal force directly poured into the saber. At the tip of the saber, a white saber light of 3 or 4 inches long was spat out. Curious, Ziyue used the overflowing saber light to cut across the chair. The saber itself didn't touch the chair at all, but with a chi sound where the saber light touched, the chair was easily cut in two. Chapter 176. Is this a treasured saber? Not only is it hard and sharp, but more importantly, it is extremely conductive to inner energy, and can even increase it to a certain extent. Ziyue's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help but reveal a look of surprise. He estimated that his inner energy, with the help of this long saber, had increased its power by more than 30%, and correspondingly, his combat power had also increased greatly. No wonder so many warriors are scrambling for the famed sabers and swords. This kind of good item that can directly increase a warrior's strength is naturally precious. Not to mention that this treasured saber of mine is even better than the famed sabers and swords. It's just that the Nine Seals Sex Manager was not strong enough and could not cultivate inner energy. Otherwise, with the amplification effect of this treasured saber on inner energy, it would not have been so easy for me to kill him. Ziyue thought in his heart, and was also somewhat fond of this long saber. After a while, he put it back into the scabbard. Looking at the black glaze of the saber as it slowly entered the scabbard, he couldn't help but have an idea. He thought to himself, since this long saber is completely black, but has a divine glow, why don't I name this saber Black God? Black God Saber. Ziyue nodded in satisfaction, and then looked at his attribute panel. Name: Ziyue Martial Arts Realm. Internal Force Immortal Arts Realm. Mortal Realm Level 5 Spiritual Power. 8000 Martial Arts. Diamond Invincibility Technique, Perfection. Purple Mansion Creation Technique, Uninitiated. Martial Arts. Perfection of Tyrant Saber Technique, Perfection. Straight Punch, Perfection. Flying Cloud Step, Perfection. Heaven Binding Hand, Perfection. Breath Holding Technique, Perfection. Heart Piercing Hammer Technique, Perfection. Divine Sword Technique, Perfection. Eagle Strike, Perfection. 7 Stars Chasing Moon, Perfection. Immortal Arts. Purple Chi Visualization Technique, Level 5 Technique. Talisman Technique, Perfection. Magic. Perfection of Spirit Eye, Magic Instinct. Perfection of Lighten Technique, Magic Instinct. Perfection of Fire Spirit Technique. Perfection of Divine Light Shield. Perfection of Resentment Cleansing Technique. Perfection of Thousand Mountain Wind Blade Technique. Perfection of Thunder Fall Technique. Spiritual Power. 75,569 inch. If I remember correctly, before joining this mission, my spiritual power amount was only slightly more than 30,000, but now it has increased to 75,000. In other words, after this operation, my spiritual energy has increased by more than 40,000 units. Looking at the spirit energy points, Ziyue could not help but reveal a satisfied expression. Even if the operation this time was somewhat baffling, he didn't mind doing it a few more times if the rewards were the same as this time. For the next few days, Ziyue did not go out. While diligently practicing the Violet Palace creation art, he hoped to be able to reach the threshold of mastery as soon as possible. At the same time, He was also constantly trying to convert magic spells into talismans. Over the past few days, he had reaped a bountiful harvest. Now, Ziyue had gradually transformed the Spirit Eye technique and the Divine Light Shield into talismans. In addition to the Spirit Fire technique from before, he had converted 3 spells into talismans: Spirit Flame Spell, Spirit Eye Spell, and Spirit Light Shield. The runic structures of these 3 spells are relatively simpler. Transforming them into talismans is also relatively easier. However, the Thousand Mountain Ice Blade technique and Lightning Fall technique had complex runes and powerful runes. It would be difficult to convert them into talismans. Aside from the difficulty of drawing talismans, the biggest limitation is the materials. The fur and blood of ordinary strange beasts does not seem to be able to support the formation of these 2 talismans. Ziyue looked at another talisman that was destroyed halfway through. He couldn't help but sigh and stop. With his previous successes, he actually had complete confidence in transforming the Thousand Mountain Ice Blade technique and Lightning Fall technique into talismans. However, the lack of quality of the talisman paper had already become the key to his success in drawing talismans. Even if he had complete confidence that he could successfully refine the talismans, he would still be like a clever housewife who cannot cook without rice. It would be difficult for him to truly draw the talismans. However, just the Spirit Flame Spell, Spirit Light Shield, and the Spirit Eye technique are actually enough. The power of these magic spell transformation talismans is based on my magic spells that have reached perfection. Their power is only slightly weaker than when I use them myself. For a chi condensation cultivator, the effects are definitely not small. Ziyue thought for a while and decided to temporarily give up on the idea of buying higher quality strange beasts, or even demon beasts' fur and blood, to refine the Thousand Mountain Ice Blade technique and Lightning Fall technique. First, the fur and blood essence of higher quality strange beasts would not appear in the market, let alone demon beasts. It was too difficult to find. The fur and blood essence of the green wolf he had obtained before had taken him several hours to search for it. It was not even as easy as going into the mountains to hunt for it himself. Second, there was not much time left for him. 2 days ago, Ziyue suddenly received a message from Xie Gu Tsang's disciple that the Immortal Spell Assembly would be held in advance. And the time was 3 days later. Apart from the Immortal Spell Assembly, although Wujiang County seems to be calm and peaceful, it is only the calm before the storm. In fact, under the calm, there are treacherous clouds and danger. A great battle will break out at any time. Although Ziyue did not go out, he was not completely ignorant of the outside world. The attendants in the manor were his eyes and ears, and could gather a lot of information for him. Besides, his cheap senior brother would also come by from time to time. From him, Ziyue had a better understanding of the situation in Wujiang County. When the news of Nine Seal sect attacking the Scorching Sun Gang spread, everyone thought that the Scorching Sun Gang was already at a disadvantage. Who would have thought that the Scorching Sun Gang would also launch a fierce counterattack against Nine Seal sect at the same time? Nine Seal Weapon Workshop was destroyed and burned to the ground. Nine Seal sect's subordinate force, Yonghe Pill Workshop, was completely massacred. Nine Seal sect's shipment of goods worth 30,000 taels of silver to Sky Spirit County was looted by a group of bandits. A hall master of Nine Seal sect who was escorting the goods was beheaded and died in the process. One by one, they exploded, causing the entire Wujiang County to tremble. Everyone sighed. The Scorching Sun Gang was indeed the Scorching Sun Gang. This wave of revenge was especially ruthless, almost hitting Nine Seal sect where it hurt. Because of this, whether it was the Scorching Sun Gang or Nine Seal sect, they all quieted down and resumed their peace, as if the previous attack had never happened. However, everyone could see that this peace was only temporary. An even greater battle was bound to brew. However, to the bewilderment of countless people, The Radiant Sun sect and the Nine Seals sect actually ceased their activities for a long period of time. It was as if the huge conflict that had broken out between the two sides did not exist. Then, inexplicably, the conflicts between some of the smaller forces in Wujiang County suddenly intensified. The 3 escort agencies and the 4 martial arts schools were no exception. Because of some small grievances, fierce conflicts often broke out between them. Almost everywhere, the figures of the disciples of these forces could be seen fighting. Each and every one of these incidents surprised countless people and made them somewhat baffled. However, there were also some shrewd people who saw the shadows of the Scorching Sun Gang and Nine Seal sect through these fights. However, he already understood that the two factions were clearing the place for the final battle. The various forces in Wujiang County could not escape the check and balance. Either they sided with the Scorching Sun Gang or the Nine Seal sect. No one could stay out of this. In the courtyard of the Bai Mansion, on the observation deck, Ziwa looked at the ship in the distance, but his mind was not on it at all. Tomorrow will be the day of the Immortal Spell Assembly. Whether or not I can really cultivate the next part of the Purple Chi visualization technique will depend on tomorrow's assembly. If it doesn't work, I can only rely on the deduction function of my soul energy to deduce the cultivation method of the 6th level. The consumption of soul energy in this process is too great. Ziua's eyes flickered. He was somewhat uncertain. The only friendship he had with Li Hun was that they had met once at Qinghe Town's Qinghe Pier. Moreover, whether or not Li Hun still remembered him was still uncertain. If Li Hun directly rejected him, he did not have many choices left. Either he could use his soul energy to deduce the next part of the cultivation method. Otherwise, he would have to take the risk. Neither of the two choices was a good plan. However, it's useless to think too much now. For tomorrow's trip, if I can really make the exchange, I have to prepare sufficient financial resources. Luckily, after a few days of refining, I already have a lot of technique transformation talismans. It should be enough. However, this is the first time I'm participating in the Immortal Spell Assembly. I don't know what dangers there will be. If I can successfully complete the exchange, that would be the best. But what if? That Xie Gutsang is not a person worthy of trust. Ziua's eyes flickered. A trace of worry appeared on his face. If it was a fair trade, he would naturally be at ease. However, cultivators of the Immortal Spell Assembly were not that friendly. Their fighting and killing even surpassed that of martial artists. It was inevitable that he would feel some worry in his heart. Perhaps I need to increase my strength as soon as possible. Even with the strength of the 5th layer of the Qi Disciple realm, facing a group of people who have reached the 7th or even 8th layer of the Qi Disciple realm, I don't feel too safe. However, it has already been more than 10 days since I exchanged for the Zifu creation art. Although I've been diligently cultivating and the inner strength in my Dantian has also made some progress, I'm still a long way from cultivating it to the entry level. I estimate that I need at least 10 days of bitter cultivation before I can truly cultivate this inner strength mental cultivation method to the entry level. If that's the case, tomorrow's trip won't be safe. Ziua naturally placed great importance on his little life. Once there was a possibility of encountering danger, unease would emerge in his heart. This was also the case at this moment. Since it's like this, I can only take the risk. Perhaps it can allow me to advance the Violet Palace creation art to the entry level. Even if it doesn't work out, my strength will definitely increase greatly. As Ziua thought this, he made up his mind. With a flip of his hand, a jade bottle appeared in his hand. Inside the jade bottle was the clear sky pill that Lu Heng had given him. Chapter 177. The Emerald Sky Pill could greatly increase the strength of a third-rate expert. It could even help them break through their shackles and reach the level of a second-rate expert. It was easy to imagine how precious it was. Because he was not strong enough before, He had been saving it and not using it. Now that his martial strength had reached the inner force realm, he had met the initial requirements to take the Emerald Sky Pill. In addition, he urgently wanted to learn the Violet Mansion creation art and did not want to wait any longer. After making up his mind, Ziyue no longer had any thoughts of staying on the observation deck. He turned around and left without hesitation. The puppy was rolling around on the observation deck. Seeing this, it was stunned and quickly chased after him. However, its momentum was too strong and its feet were suspended in the air. It directly rolled down the stairs at the side of the observation deck. Soon, he overtook by Ziyue. Then, his face landed heavily on the ground. The puppy's eyes were blank. Then, it furiously scratched the ground with its paws, as if it wanted to avenge its dog face. In the blink of an eye, a horizontal hole was dug out by it. Frowning, Ziyue kicked out without hesitation. Without using any strength, the puppy flew out like a cannonball and fell into the lake. Because this fellow had just evolved, it did not have enough control over its strength and often used too much strength. It was also a little narrow-minded and liked to compete with the ground and rock. This caused many holes and broken rocks to appear in the manner. Ziyue had long wanted to find an opportunity to teach it a lesson. At this time, he naturally wanted to wake it up. The puppy whimpered in the lake, as if it didn't understand how it had provoked that fellow. Then, it was quickly attracted by a fiery red koi fish in the lake, and hurriedly chased after it. After returning to his room, Ziyue took a deep breath and poured out an Emerald Sky Pill. Immediately, a fragrant smell filled the air, causing people to drool. After hesitating for a moment, Ziyue put it to his mouth and carefully licked it with his tongue. In an instant, a cool feeling entered his body like a cold wind. Then, after being divided, it became hot in the blink of an eye. When it came into contact with his inner force, it was instantly absorbed and transformed. He immediately felt that his inner force had been strengthened slightly. It shouldn't be a problem, Ziyue muttered in his heart. Without any hesitation, he swallowed the Emerald Cloud Pill. Ziyue took a deep breath. The coolness of the Emerald Cloud Pill was like an ice cube at this moment, causing his entire body to feel cold. However, the pill was quickly digested and a wave of majestic and scorching energy spread out, causing Ziyue's muscles, bones, skin, flesh, blood, and internal organs to heat up. It was as if he was soaking in hot water, making him feel extremely comfortable. Inhale. Suddenly, Ziyue's face changed. He took a deep breath and hurriedly controlled the inner force in his body to quickly absorb this energy. The reason for that was because he discovered that the scorching heat was growing even more intense. It was as if it was going to burn all of his flesh into ashes. Boom! Boom! It was as if a volcano had erupted. Magma shot out in all directions. The scorching energy turned into a majestic aura sea that rippled throughout his body. There seemed to be a scorching poisonous aura hidden within it. It rose rapidly within his body and directly covered his sea of consciousness. His consciousness was hit by this poisonous aura and was momentarily stagnant. Freeze! Ziyue's mental strength increased greatly. In the blink of an eye, he expelled this poisonous aura and regained his clarity. Immediately after, he hurriedly controlled the inner force in his body and rapidly channeled it out. Little by little, this energy was transformed into inner force. At the same time, the method of using the Purple Mansion creation technique quickly flowed through his mind. Strands of suction force were produced. In this way, he finally managed to suppress the scorching heat for the time being. His body was relieved, and he also began to regain control of his body. Under the control of his flesh and blood, the scorching energy was like countless fine hammers that continuously hammered his body. Little by little, as he gradually regained control of his body, the hammering effect also became stronger. His skin, flesh, tendons, bones, marrow, and even his internal organs all became stronger under the nourishment and hammering of this scorching energy. This caused his physical strength to gradually increase. The poisonous aura continued to be produced, blurring Ziyue's consciousness. However, his mental strength was incomparably strong. It was as steady as Mount Tai and he maintained his clarity. The Purple Mansion creation technique was activated. No matter how ferocious the energy was, it was quickly transformed into inner force and became the source of his strength. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. After the initial ferocity, Ziyue became more and more relaxed. Half an hour later, the medicinal effects in his body were completely absorbed. He also slowly opened his eyes. As expected of the Emerald Sky pill, 1 pill has increased my strength by 30%. The inner force in my dantian has increased from the original 154 points to 384 points. It has increased by 230 points. Based on my usual daily cultivation, I can only increase my inner force by 2 or 3 points. This Emerald Sky pill is equivalent to saving me 2 or 3 months of bitter cultivation. In comparison, the side effects of the poisonous aura that confuses the mind and disturbs the mind are not unacceptable. Any medicinal pill will have poisonous aura. This is a very normal thing. Furthermore, this Emerald Sky pill was refined from the inner core of a snake demon. It is innately violent. Ziyue thought to himself. He was quite satisfied with the effects of this Emerald Sky pill. As the saying goes, every medicine is 30% poisonous. This was common sense. Compared to the effects of medicinal pills, some of the poisonous aura was tolerable. It's just a pity that my inner force mantra, the Purple Mansion creation technique, still hasn't been initiated. However, I can already clearly feel that I am only 1 step away from truly being initiated into this inner force mantra. I only need to take 1 final step to cross the threshold. Ziyue felt the effects of the mantra in his body, but his expression was very calm. Without the slightest hesitation, he poured out another Emerald Sky pill. This final Emerald Sky pill will definitely be able to push my inner force mantra to beyond the initiation stage. A divine light flashed in Ziyue's eyes as he directly swallowed the Emerald Sky pill into his stomach. As for the poisonous aura within the Emerald Sky pill, he no longer cared. After all, he only needed to refine it for a period of time to eliminate it. It wouldn't have any effect on him. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, after 20 minutes, Ziyue once again opened his eyes. Finally, I've been initiated into the Purple Mansion creation technique. My inner force has also increased to 512 points. Looking at the information on his status panel, Ziyue's face couldn't help but reveal an excited expression. Even though he had already expected that relying on the second Emerald Sky pill would definitely allow him to reach the initiation stage of his inner force mantra, he was still very excited when he actually reached the threshold. As for the small increase in inner force, it was far from what it had been with the first pill. However, he had already been mentally prepared and wasn't disappointed. Now that I've reached the initiation stage of the Purple Mansion creation technique, I can naturally use my spiritual energy to upgrade this technique. My strength will definitely be able to quickly increase. Thinking of this, Ziyue's gaze turned and fell on the Purple Mansion creation technique. 15,462 points of spiritual energy have been consumed. I can upgrade the inner force chapter of the Purple Mansion creation technique to perfection. Ziyue was slightly startled. He had originally thought that this upgrade would allow the entire Purple Mansion creation technique to progress from the initiation stage to the small success stage, and then to the large success stage. He hadn't expected that it would be like the Purple Chi visualization technique, where it would be separated into separate chapters. However, thinking about it carefully, this was normal. Regardless of whether it was inner force cultivation or immortal cultivation, they were both more complicated and more tyrannical than when he was cultivating his physical body. If he followed the previous division, perhaps his strength would be able to instantly increase to an extremely high level, but the amount of spiritual energy he would need to consume would definitely be enormous. On the contrary, it was better to take it one step at a time, which was more stable and easier to achieve. Upgrade. With this thought in mind, Ziyue quickly calmed his mind and chose to upgrade without any hesitation. 1. Ziyue's vision blurred for a moment, and then he felt his body heat up. It was as if in this instant, he had undergone countless bitter cultivation and had circulated the Purple Mansion creation technique thousands of times. Not only had his understanding of this inner force cultivation technique reached a new height, but the inner force in his body had also strengthened, reaching a certain limit. His inner force, which had been somewhat frivolous due to the continuous consumption of clear sky pills, had become incomparably solid, as if it had been tempered thousands of times. It flowed freely, majestic and heavy. Even the pill-poison qi seemed to have been expelled from his body. It no longer had any effect on his body. The inner force chapter of the Purple Mansion creation technique has been upgraded to perfection. My strength has also increased, reaching the peak of the inner force realm. As for my inner force, 1,000 points. Ziyue's eyes lit up. 1,000 points of inner force made him truly feel how powerful he was. In other words, he was already at the limit of the inner force realm. At any time, he could begin to break through the 12 meridians in his body. Once he broke through the first meridian, his strength would also increase, and he could be called a third-rate expert. Third-rate expert? Ziyue smiled faintly, once again looking at the Purple Mansion creation technique. Consumed 120000 spiritual energy to upgrade the 12 principal chapters of the Violet Mansion creation art to perfection. So much? Ziyue's heart skipped a beat, and his face couldn't help but twitch. Fortunately, the information on the status panel quickly changed. Consume 10,000 spiritual energy to upgrade the lung meridian of the Hantaian meridian of the Purple Mansion creation technique. Consume 10,000 spiritual energy to upgrade the large intestine meridian of the Hanyangming meridian of the large intestine meridian of the Purple Mansion creation technique. Consume to upgrade the spleen meridian of the Futtaian meridian. In this way, the 12 meridians could all be upgraded through spiritual energy. Chapter 178. The 12 meridians are divided into the hand extreme Yin meridian, hand extreme Yang meridian, foot extreme Yin meridian, and foot 3 Yin meridian, which correspond to a martial artist's hands and feet. Once the meridians are connected, the strength of the corresponding hands and feet will increase greatly. For example, if the 3 meridians of the hand extreme Yin meridian are connected, then the strength of my left hand will increase greatly. When the inner strength surges in, it won't consume too much energy and I will be able to fully display the might of the inner strength. The same goes for the foot extreme Yin meridian. If all 12 meridians are connected, then both hands and feet will be able to display great power. I can even use my hands to block a martial artist's weapon. Some palm techniques and fist techniques will be able to display great effect. In Ziyue's mind, some descriptions of third-rate experts appeared. If he wanted to correspond, he could easily sense the difference between a third-rate expert and an ordinary inner strength practitioner. I originally thought that the amount of soul energy I have is enough to raise my martial arts to the second-rate level. But now it seems that I am still far from it. However, 60,000 soul energy is enough for me to open 6 meridians. My strength will also undergo an earth-shattering change, which is not bad. But which meridian should I choose to upgrade? Looking at his remaining soul energy, Ziyue couldn't help but ponder. In terms of martial arts, all my strength lies in my hands. Whether it is the tyrannical blade art or the heaven-binding hands, they all rely on my hands to display their might. Naturally, I should upgrade the meridians in my hands to be able to display greater might. Soon, Ziyue made his decision. Consume 10,000 soul energy to open the hand extreme een meridian of the 12 standard meridians of the Purple Mansion creation art. Consume 10,000 soul energy to open the hand extreme een pericardium meridian of the 12 standard meridians of the Purple Mansion creation art. Consume 10,000 soul energy to open the hand minor een meridian of the 12 standard meridians of the Purple Mansion creation art. Upgrade. 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 Consume 30,000 soul energy to open 3 meridians of the hand extreme yang meridian of the 12 standard meridians of the Purple Mansion creation art. Upgrade. Xiu's expression didn't change as he instantly chose to upgrade the 6 meridians of the hand extreme een meridian and hand extreme yang meridian. 1. The internal energy in Xiu's body became turbulent in an instant. Like a sharp sword, it quickly rushed into the corresponding meridians. In the blink of an eye, these meridians were all broken. After that, as if it had undergone countless revolutions, it caused these newly opened chi paths to rapidly expand, becoming wide and tough like a solid road. No matter how much inner chi surged, it was unable to break through. Following the expansion of his meridians, Xiu's inner strength also grew rapidly. It flowed through his meridians like a torrential river, recklessly tumbling. The Han Taiyang Sutra and the Han Taiyang Sutra have been connected and strengthened, allowing my hands to become at least twice as strong as before. You should know that my original strength wasn't weak, and Xiu could not help but stretch out both of his hands. With a thought, a surge of internal energy quickly rushed out. Chi. A faint purple internal force rushed out as sharp as a sword. It was at least an inch away from his body before gradually dissipating. Is this the internal force cultivated by the Violet Kingdom creation art? In comparison, it is indeed much stronger than the internal force cultivated by normal mental cultivation method. Xiu had once felt the internal force of Lu Dong and Ye Yunhao. Comparing the two, he could clearly feel that his internal force was far more condensed than theirs. Moreover, the internal force cultivated by the Violet Kingdom creation art had a certain recovery effect. Even if he was injured, he could recover to a certain extent through the Violet Kingdom internal force. Even the recovery speed of his internal force was much faster than normal mental cultivation method. No wonder it was called a top internal force mental cultivation method. Only now did Xiu look at his status panel. Name: Xiu Martial Arts Realm. Third-rate Expert Internal Force. 7,000 Immortal Technique Realm. Mortal Realm Level 5 Spiritual Power. 8,000 Martial Arts. Great Perfection of the Indestructible Vajra Technique. 12 Principal Chapters of the Violet Kingdom Creation Art. Through the Sixth Path, Martial Arts. Great Perfection of the Tyrannical Blade Technique, Single Character Linked Fist, Vertical Cloud Steps, Heaven Binding Hands, Breath Holding Technique, Elementary Level of the Heart Piercing. Hammer Technique, Elementary Level of the Divine Sword Technique, Elementary Level of the Eagle Strike 10 Forms, Elementary Level of the 7 Stars Chasing Moon Immortal Technique. Purple Chi Visualization Technique Level 5 Technique. Talisman Technique Perfection Magic. Perfection of the Spiritual Eye Technique, Magic Instinct. Perfection of the Lighten Technique, Magic Instinct. Perfection of the Spiritual Flame Technique. Perfection of the Divine Light Shield. Perfection of the Resentment Cleansing Technique. Perfection of the Thousand Mountain Wind Blade Technique. Perfection of the Lightning Fall Technique. Spiritual Power. 107 inch. I only have a little more than 100 points of spiritual power left. It seems that I need to replenish it as soon as possible. However, at the same time, I have finally become a true third-rate expert. Even my meridians have been connected through 6 of them. My strength has greatly improved, and I have completely surpassed the white-clothed swordsman, Chen Qingyun. Xiu still remembered the words spoken at the bow of the ship when he first stepped into Wujiang County. A son like Chen Qingyun. Although he did not care too much about this kind of praise, He could not help but set Chen Qingyun as one of his goals. A goal that he wanted to surpass. Now, it had not even been a month since he stepped into Wujiang County, and he had already stepped into the ranks of third-rate experts. In terms of true strength, he had surpassed Chen Qingyun, who had just become a third-rate expert and had opened 1 or 2 meridians. This kind of feeling made him feel a little excited. Not only have I surpassed Chen Qingyun, but with my martial arts realm and the perfection of the tyrant blade technique, I am not far from being invincible among third-rate experts. Even if I face a true second-rate expert, I will be able to put up a fight. Ziyue could not help but reveal a trace of confidence in his eyes. The next day, Ziyue was dressed in martial attire. He held the scabbard in his hand and the beast skin pouch he had obtained from Elder Wudao at his waist as he walked out. This time, he was going to participate in the Immortal Technique Assembly in Wujiang County organized by the old rogue cultivator, Old Wu. He had been preparing for this for a long time. Therefore, although he looked calm on the surface, he could not help but feel excited and nervous in his heart. After leaving the room, Ziyue walked straight, crossed 2 streets, and then stood in a small pavilion. After a while, he saw a figure walking over in a leisurely manner from afar. This figure was dressed in a black robe. There were 2 grizzled whiskers above his mouth, but his face was rosy. It was the old scholar's cheap senior brother, Xie Gutsang. "Thank you, senior." Ziyue hurriedly greeted him. Let's go. This assembly has been arranged at Golden Accord." Xie Gutsang nodded slightly and walked forward first. Golden Accord. It was one of the 4 major trading companies in Wujiang County. It was extremely famous in the entire Wujiang County. Not only was it located on the most prosperous street in the entire Wujiang County, but it also occupied a very large area and had a wide variety of businesses. It spanned a full 100 meters and was within the scope of Golden Accord. There was an exquisite and huge signboard, decorated in gold and jade. As soon as they stepped inside, a unique fragrance assailed their nostrils, making them feel refreshed. "Tranquility incense?" Ziyue probingly asked Xie Gutsang. "It's not a true tranquility incense. It only has the characteristics of a magic incense. It's relatively simple to make and the price is not expensive. This can be considered a small business of my general temple." Without this, the general temple would have collapsed long ago. Xie Gutsang faintly said. His figure turned and he directly stepped onto the 2nd floor. Ziyue knew in his heart that the general temple's business was not as simple as he said. Not to mention the vast Golden Accord, just the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, one of the 3 major restaurants, also used a strange fragrance that had the characteristics of a magic incense. Just the supply of these 2 restaurants was enough to make the general temple very comfortable. Not to mention the real big part, there were many magic incense with strange effects, such as tranquility incense and spirit-gathering incense. However, it seems that the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion and Golden Accord are inextricably linked to people who cultivate the immortal method. Ziyue silently thought as he followed Xie Gutsang to the 2nd floor. The 2nd floor was also part of the Golden Accord's shop area. However, what they sold were all expensive items. Most of them were gold ornaments, jade, agate, and so on. Those who could stroll around here were all people with quite a bit of status. Without stopping on the 2nd floor, Ziyue followed Xie Gutsang and quickly arrived at the stairs leading to the 3rd floor. However, there were 2 people with solemn faces guarding here. They had an appearance that prevented strangers from entering. Beside the 2 guards, there was an old man who looked like a housekeeper. Seeing Xie Gutsang, the housekeeper quickly walked 2 steps forward and greeted, "Master Xie Gutsang, you've arrived. The master and the other immortal masters have already arrived. They're currently drinking tea upstairs. My master usually treasures the kumquat spirit leaf tea a lot. Today, he even took it out to entertain you." "Oh? Old man Zhou is usually very stingy. Today, He's actually willing to take out this spirit leaf tea to entertain you. Then, I must properly taste it. Siegu Tsang's eyes lit up. He smiled and nodded as he spoke. That's right. Has Lord Li arrived? Immediately after, Siegu Tsang casually asked. Ziyue's heart moved. He knew that Siegu Tsang was asking for him. He couldn't help but feel a trace of gratitude in his heart. Li Hun was the key for him to exchange for the second half of the purple chi visualization technique. He's here. He arrived early this morning, the housekeeper hurriedly replied. However, his gaze calmly sized up Ziyue. Seeing his martial artist attire, his eyes couldn't help but flash a trace of doubt. However, since it was related to an immortal master, he didn't dare to ask. Ziyue let out a long sigh of relief. He nodded to the housekeeper and said, "Thank you." However, it was unknown who he was thanking. The housekeeper could only nod in response. After going up to the third floor, a tall and beautiful maid in purple clothes quickly brought them to a spacious room. As far as the eye could see, there were 7 or 8 people in 2s and 3s. Each of them was sitting on a chair and carefully tasting tea. Among them, Li Hun and Li Jubo, whom Ziyue had met once before, were impressively among them. Chapter 179. Apart from them, Ziyue had never seen anyone else before. He could only vaguely feel that some of the spiritual pressure on their bodies were not small. They were clearly existences that had already stepped into the 7th layer of refinement stage or above. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Ziyue calmly entered with Siegu Tsang. "Everyone, I'm not late, right?" Siegu Tsang faintly smiled and greeted. "Not yet. Apart from you, Zhang Xianshi and Old Wu have not arrived yet. You're not late." Someone immediately called out to him. "Xielao Xiang, we're waiting for you. Quickly take a seat." An old man sitting at the head of the table also stood up with a smile on his face and invited with a smile. Immediately after, he looked at Ziyue behind Siegu Tsang with some doubt and joked. "Xielao Xiang, did you know that I, Old Zhou, spent a lot of money and took out kumquat spirit leaf tea to entertain you, so you brought your disciple here to eat and drink? Who doesn't know of your stingy nature? If you don't have a request, why would you be so generous?" Siegu Tsang snorted and said, "This is a new friend that I've met. He's good at making talismans and is also a loose cultivator. I'm Ziyue. Greetings, fellow seniors." Ziyue cupped his hands and said, "Making talismans? Old Su, it seems that you've met your match." A beautiful woman who looked to be in her 30s and wore a red robe chuckled. She looked at a thin middle-aged man and said, "Making talismans is not a great job. Mortals can also make talismans. For us, the most important thing is to be able to display the power of talismans. It's easy to get started, but the real threshold is inside the door." The thin middle-aged man shook his head and said disapprovingly. Ziyue remained silent and did not speak. Instead, he calmly looked at everyone in the hall and compared them with Siegu Tsang's previous introduction. Previously, the one at the head should be the owner of this golden accord pavilion, Zhou Liqing. The one who spoke to Siegu Tsang should be called Zhao Wugan, nicknamed Wu Lao General if his guess was right. That beautiful woman was the pavilion master of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, Ji Fenyang. Just as he had guessed, the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion was indeed related to the people who cultivated the way of immortality. However, he did not know what was going on with the other 2 sects that were as famous as the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. As for Old Su, his name was Su Pengxing. Just like him, he was good at creating talismans. During the immortal spell gathering, most of the talismans used by the others were provided by him. As for the others, there was no need to mention Li Hun and Li Jubo. There were also 2 others. One of them had the appearance of a middle-aged woman and was called Blood Lady. Her eyebrows made people feel a chill. According to Siegu Tsang, she was not someone to be trifled with. As for the remaining one, Ziyue guessed that he should be Pei Yuanwu, who worked in the immortal pavilion like Li Hun. The last two were naturally the ones mentioned by Wu Laojian, Zhang Xianshi and the old rogue cultivator, Old Wu. Among them, Zhang Xianshi was said to be an alchemist. His alchemy Dao was exquisite, especially the splendid spirit pill. It was said that for those who cultivated the way of immortality in the qi refining stage, it had the effect of increasing their cultivation. It was very popular. As for Old Wu, his nickname was the Old Rogue Cultivator. It was said that he was already more than 130 years old. The entire immortal spell gathering was organized by him. His strength was also the strongest among everyone, at the 9th layer of the qi refining stage. It was said that he had been seeking the opportunity to break through for a long time. Soon, a maid served the spirit tea. Ziyue expressed his thanks. Hearing the several people chatting with each other, he could not help but open the teacup and take a sip of the tea. He was also very curious about this so-called kumquat spirit leaf tea. Good tea. Ziyue could not help but blurt out. He had eaten good tea before. In his previous life, it was not that he had not tasted the top tea leaves that were known to be worth 10,000 taels. However, this kumquat spirit leaf tea not only had a natural taste that was not inferior to those top tea leaves, it also contained spirit qi. As the tea poured into his body, it constantly washed over him, causing his body and mind to tremble. Following that, there was a cool and comfortable feeling that constantly emerged. It was indeed worthy of being called a spirit tea. It had its own uniqueness. This kumquat spirit leaf tea is naturally good tea. It only matures once every 3 years, and each batch is only 8 taels. Normally, I would not be willing to drink a sip, but today, I directly poured 2 taels. It makes old Zhou's heart and liver hurt. It hurts even more than losing 10,000 taels of silver. Hearing this, Zhou Liqing could not help but say, "Old man Zhou, you've spent so much money. In addition, this gathering was specially held in your Golden Accord Pavilion. If I'm not wrong, you must have something to ask of me this time." Xie Gu Tsang could not help but take a sip of the spirit tea, and then ridiculed. Xie Lao Xiang still understands me. However, as for the specific matter, let's wait for old Wu to arrive, and then we can talk about it together. Zhou Liqing did not feel awkward, and laughed as he opened his mouth to speak. Seeing this, the others did not force him. Ziyue looked towards Li Hun and Li Jubo. Just as he was about to speak, slightly enthusiastic voices sounded one after another. "Old Wu! Old Wu has come, and Zhang Xianshi as well. Why have you guys come together? Old Wu, I trust you have been well since we last met." Even Li Hun respectfully greeted them. Ziyue could not help but turn his gaze over. His white hair was delicately tied up with a hairpin, and his long beard almost covered his neck. However, his complexion was white and rosy, and his eyes were pitch black and full of spirit. He did not look like an old man who was already over 130 years old, but rather a little old man in his 50s or 60s. Old Wu, Pill Master Zhou. Ziyue also stood up and opened his mouth to greet them. "Old Wu and I just happened to meet at the entrance." Zhang Xianshi first responded, then looked towards Ziyue and said, "A newcomer?" "Yes, I am Ziyue. I was introduced by Xie Gu Tsang and Senior Xie." Ziyue replied, "Yes, Xie Laoxiang mentioned you to me." Old Wu, who was standing by the side, also spoke out. Zhang Xianshi nodded and did not say anything else, and greeted the others. After a round of greetings, Old Wu drank a mouthful of spirit tea and said, "Originally, I did not want to call everyone over so quickly this time. However, a few days ago, Old Man Zhou came to find me and said that he had something to ask of everyone. I thought that we might as well bring forward the immortal spell assembly and call everyone over. However, we can postpone Old Man Zhou's matter. As usual, let's make a deal first." The others also nodded. The immortal spell assembly was originally about making deals first. As for other matters, it would not be too late to discuss them in detail after the deal was over. Let me go first. You all know that I am already more than 130 years old and know that my lifespan is coming to an end. However, I have cultivated the immortal spell for over 100 years, and naturally have a heart that seeks the Tao. So, I'm still going to say the same thing. I need an Acupore's enlightening pill, or even a bottleneck-breaking pill will do. As long as you can provide me with information, I'm even willing to take out this longevity jade in exchange. The eternal spring art recorded in the jade will naturally be handed over. It is because of it that I, Old Wu, am able to maintain my fighting strength at more than 130 years old and dare to break through to a higher level. As he spoke, Old Wu looked at everyone with a face full of expectation. Old Wu, you also know that Wujiang County is too small. Whether it is the aperture enlightening pill or the barrier breaking pill, they are not ordinary pills. Unless the imperial court bestows them, it is impossible for them to appear in a small place like ours. Pei Yuanwu sighed and said, "Sigh, it is difficult to be a loose cultivator." Old Wu sighed and said, "I am only asking as a matter of routine. This bronze mirror is something I obtained by chance when I went out a while ago. It has the effect of calming one's mind. Although it is only a 27 restriction magic treasure, it has a certain effect. Who wants it? Name a price?" Soon, Heavenly Fragrance Pavilions Ji Fengyang and Zhou Liqing both called out prices. In the end, Zhou Liqing traded for the bronze mirror magic treasure with 30 low-grade spirit stones of different sizes and a box of 100-year ginseng. Then, Zhang Xianshi walked up and said, "Recently, I planned to refine a cauldron of lotus heart pills. I have most of the materials prepared, but I am still missing a spiritual ingredient called painstaking heart grass. I can use 3 splendid spirit pills to exchange for it. Or, if you trust this Zhang's alchemy skills, once the pill is formed, I can also give you a lotus heart pill. Oh right, this lotus heart pill has the miraculous effect of increasing one's spiritual sense. It is quite effective for people with weak spiritual sense. Coincidentally, I went out a while ago and found a stalk of painstaking heart grass. I am having trouble dealing with it, so I will exchange it with alchemist Zhang." Elder Zhen hurriedly stood up and took out a box of spirit materials from his collection. He handed it over and said, "Since this lotus heart pill can make alchemist Zhang willing to use Third Sister's magnificent spirit pill as an equivalent exchange, it must be extraordinary. Then I will wait for a while and get the lotus heart pill." "Good." Zhang Xianshi was overjoyed and agreed. Soon, people came up one after another and took out the items they wanted to exchange or needed. Whoever had it and the price was right could exchange it. Of course, there were also cases like Old Wu, where the item they needed was either too precious or too rare, so no one had it in their possession. Thus, the people who proposed the exchange could only be disappointed. Among them, Blood Lady took out an immortal cultivation method called the Tricolor Pure Yuan Technique as an exchange item. Bai Ziyue was a little interested. After all, this was a cultivation method that could directly cultivate to the 9th level of Qi refining stage. If he failed to exchange for the purple Qi visualization technique this time, it could be used as a supplement. Unfortunately, the other party wanted to exchange it for a water attribute spiritual item, the first Yuan heavy water. If it wasn't for this item, he could only sigh in disappointment. When one person's request wasn't satisfied and he sat down in disappointment, Ziyue finally couldn't endure it any longer. He stood up and cupped his hands to everyone. He said, "Seniors, Junior was lucky enough to obtain an immortal cultivation method a few years ago. That was how I embarked on the path of immortal cultivation. However, due to his lack of luck, the immortal cultivation method he obtained was an incomplete one. Only the first volume was complete, but the second volume was missing. Thus, Junior wants to use this opportunity to see if I can obtain the second volume of the Immortal Cultivation Method so that I won't be stuck at a bottleneck. Chapter 180. My cultivation method is the Purple Chi Divine Observation Technique. If anyone can provide me with the second half of the cultivation method, I am willing to make an exchange of equal value, or even pay an extra price. That is acceptable. Oh yes, these are the talismans that I made. They are the Explosive Fire Talisman, the God's Eye Talisman, and the Divine Light Shield Talisman. I believe that their power is quite good. Among them, the Explosive Fire Talisman should be equivalent to the full force attack of a cultivator at the 5th level of the Chi refining stage, who uses the 27 enchantments. The God's Eye Talisman can see through the mysteries of countless illusions. Ordinary trapping formations cannot escape the detection of the God's Eye Talisman. As for the Divine Light Shield Talisman, it should not be a problem to block the attack of a cultivator at the 4th or 5th level of the Chi refining stage. As Ziua spoke, he took out a stack of talismans and unfolded them one by one. Immediately, everyone felt a faint spiritual pressure emanating from the talismans. Is the power of the Explosive Fire Talisman really that great? Zhou Liqing's eyes lit up and he could not help but ask. Can the God's Eye Talisman really see through the illusion formation? Even the Blood Lady could not help but ask. She looked rather tempted. The eyes of the others also flickered at this moment, as if they were rather tempted. If Ziua's talismans were really as powerful as he said, they were indeed much more powerful than the talismans that Su Pengxing had made. Of course they are real. Ziua nodded confidently. The Explosive Fire Talisman, the God's Eye Talisman, and the Divine Light Shield Talisman were the spell transformation talismans that Ziua had drawn using the spells that he had mastered. However, regardless of whether it was the Spirit Fire Technique, the Divine Light Shield Technique, or the Spirit Eye Technique, they were all low-level spells. If he had directly called them the Spirit Fire Talisman and the Divine Light Shield Talisman, others would have looked down on him. Therefore, he had an idea and changed the names of the talismans. Now it seemed that the effect was not bad. Impossible. Your cultivation is only at the 4th or 5th level of the Chi refining stage. How could you make such powerful talismans? Su Pengxing questioned with a gloomy face. In order not to arouse suspicion, Ziua directly released the restrictions of his breath concealment technique, so that others could see through his cultivation. Hearing this, the others narrowed their eyes and became somewhat suspicious. In any case, old Su was also a talisman master who was proficient in this field. Most of the talismans that they had used in the past had been provided by the other party. So, the transaction could be considered pleasant. So, they naturally trusted each other a little more. When it comes to talismans, it's definitely difficult to convince others with just word. Amongst all of us, there's also a lack of appraisers that can directly determine the might of a talisman based on the veined patterns of a talisman. Therefore, even if I believe in the power of this talisman, I still have to test it to determine its strength. Of course, the losses would naturally be on my head. I wonder if little friend is willing? At this moment, the old rogue cultivator Old Wu stood up calmly and looked at Ziua. Forget about the loss. I'm willing to believe in Elder Wu's fairness. Ziua did not hesitate and directly agreed. That's good. This mystic tortoise shield of mine was refined from the shell of a psychic mystic tortoise I slayed a long time ago. After refining it, it now has 51 restrictions. Not only is its physical defense astonishing, it can also automatically emit a layer of spiritual light. This spiritual light should not be a problem to block the attack of a 5th-level Qi refining cultivator. Let's see if fellow Taoist Bai's Explosive Fire Talisman is really as powerful as he says. As Old Wu spoke, he directly patted the cloth bag at his waist. Immediately, a mystic tortoise shield appeared in his hand. Without wasting any time, he directly poured his spiritual power into it. In an instant, the mystic tortoise shield, which was originally the size of a palm, expanded with the wind and became half the size of a person. Then, on the mystic tortoise shield, a fluorescent light flashed. Then, on the edge of the tortoise shell, streams of light intertwined. The streams of light merged with each other and instantly formed a light screen. As the streams of light overflowed, it was shocking. Storage bag. Size control restriction. Xiu's eyes exploded with a trace of light. He always knew that in this world, there were treasures such as storage bags that could open a space within a sumaru mustard seed. This kind of treasure was not only difficult to refine, but the materials required were also rare and hard to find. It was said that its value was even more precious than a high-grade magic tool. He did not expect that this old loose cultivator, Old Wu, would have one. As for the size control restriction, it was a special restriction that could expand or shrink magic tools. This time, Old Wu was able to control the mystic tortoise shield according to his will because of the effect of the size control restriction. Although he was surprised, Xiu quickly calmed down and said, "Be careful." With a flip of his hand, the explosive fire talisman was immediately activated. Whoosh! In an instant, a ball of orange-red flames whistled through the air and rapidly landed on the ball of spiritual light in front of the black tortoise shield. Puff! The flames exploded, and it didn't take long to break through the defensive light curtain. The remaining power of the flames then landed on the shield, and it took a while for the spiritual light to dissipate before it was extinguished. Hiss! Someone sucked in a breath of cold air and looked in shock at the talisman in Xiu's hand. His gaze instantly became heated. Everyone present had good eyesight and could easily determine the power of the explosive fire talisman. Not only was it not weak, it was actually much stronger than what he had said. After some of the weaker people present secretly compared it, they felt that even they would find it difficult to block it. Once several explosive fire talismans were used, their hearts couldn't help but tremble. No matter what, they absolutely had to exchange for one or two of these talismans. In a critical moment, these talismans could save their lives. The power of this explosive fireball is indeed, as fellow Taoist Bai said. Its power is extraordinary. In terms of one standard spirit stone, one explosive fire talisman should be worth around 15 spirit stones. In view of the scarcity of these talismans, 16 or 17 spirit stones per talisman is not unacceptable. The old rogue cultivator, Old Wu, was silent for a while before speaking. With these words, he officially recognized the power of Xiu's talismans. No one dared to question him. Even if Su Pengxing was unwilling, he didn't dare to say anything. After all, Old Wu was not only powerful, but he was also more than 130 years old. His knowledge was even more extensive. In addition to his years of credibility, everyone believed in him. Even Pei Yuanwu, who belonged to the Immortal Pavilion and was at the 7th layer of qi condensation, was the same. Immediately after, Old Wu tested the Divine Light Shield Talisman and the Divine Eye Talisman. His face couldn't help but be moved as he said, "The Divine Light Shield Talisman's defensive power is amazing. Even a cultivator at the 4th or 5th layer of qi condensation would find it difficult to break it in one go. It is already comparable to a low-level magic tool. Its price is also around 15 spirit stones. As for the Divine Eye Talisman, it has a special effect and is even better. I am willing to spend 20 spirit stones to buy one." "Brother Bai, how many talismans do you have? I want all of them." As soon as Old Wu finished speaking, Ji Fengyang, the master of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, hurriedly came up and said eagerly, "Sister Ji, this is a bit unreasonable. What should we do if you want all of them? Give me 5 explosive fire talismans and Divine Light Shield talismans, and 3 Divine Eye talismans." Zhou Liqing, the master of the Golden Elegance Pavilion, also hurriedly said, He was afraid that he would be a step slower and lose the talismans. I can't compare to you two tycoons, but these talismans are indeed extraordinary. I am also willing to buy 2 of them in case of emergency. The 5 old men also came up and shouted. The noisy scene caused Su Pengxing's expression to turn extremely ugly at this moment. In this immortal spell assembly, he was the only one who was good at making talismans. Now that there was another competitor, Ziyue, and the talismans made by the other party were far better than his own, he immediately felt a strong sense of crisis. Fortunately, he saw that the Blood Lady, Pei Yuanwu, Xie Gutsang, and the others beside him didn't come up. He relaxed and couldn't help but say with a smile, although these talismans are good, they may not be made by him. I always believe that it is difficult to make stronger talismans if one's strength is insufficient. I believe you all have this doubt. No, we don't know much about making talismans. However, the talismans on fellow Taoist Bai's body were obviously made recently. If he didn't have any seniors who cultivated immortal arts behind him, then these talismans should have been refined by him. And from what he said before, there is no follow-up cultivation method, so it is more likely that he made these talismans himself. The Blood Lady faintly shook her head and said. Su Pengxing's smile froze. The reason why we didn't go up is because fellow Taoist Bai mentioned before that he came to exchange for the follow-up cultivation method. The purple qi divine art is the foundation of the Chaoyang sect. Although it is not forbidden to spread, we don't have it on us. That is why we didn't want to go up and join in the fun. It's not that we aren't interested in the talismans. Pei Yuanwu glanced at Su Pengxing indifferently and said, these talismans can be used by high-grade cultivators above the 7th layer of qi condensation. Even I am a bit tempted. If I knew that fellow Taoist Bai's talismans were so powerful, I would have exchanged for some. Xie Gutsang followed up with an extremely regretful expression on his face. Su Pengxing's face stiffened and a trace of arrogance emerged from the depths of his heart. His eyes were cold as he glanced at Ziyue not far away. Ziyue didn't know that he had unknowingly been hated by others. He looked at the enthusiastic Ji Fengyang, Zhou Liqing, and the others and said calmly, thank you all for liking my talismans. But as I said before, I came for the follow-up cultivation method of the purple qi divine art. At present, I only want to exchange these talismans for the 2nd volume of the purple qi divine art. So, I can only say sorry. As he spoke, Ziyue couldn't help but glance at Li Hun, who was still sitting in the same place. He couldn't help but feel a trace of anxiety in his heart. Could it be that these talismans couldn't tempt Li Hun? Speaking of which, fellow Taoist Bai seemed to be quite interested in my tricolor pure yuan technique. Perhaps it would be good to exchange it for some talismans. Suddenly, the Blood Lady's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't help but take out the jade slip that recorded the tricolor pure yuan technique. Hearing this, Li Hun, who had been hesitating, finally stood up without hesitation. Chapter 181. Fellow Taoist Bai, I practice the purple qi visualization technique. Would you be interested in it? Li Hun stood up and looked at Ziyue. Of course I'm interested. How many talismans would you like to exchange for? Ziyue was excited and quickly asked. The purple qi visualization technique is the basic technique of the Chaoyang sect. It has extraordinary effects and is much more valuable than ordinary immortal cultivation technique. It is usually priced at more than 800 spirit stones. Even if you have the 1st volume of the purple qi visualization technique, the 2nd volume is still the most valuable. Therefore, I would like to exchange the 2nd volume of the purple qi visualization technique for 600 spirit stones. Would you be willing to exchange for it? Li Hun looked at Ziyue and said, no problem. Ziyue nodded. Even if it was 1,000 spirit stones, he would still reluctantly give it up, let alone 600 standard spirit stones. After all, this was the basic technique that he needed. It was not something that other items could compare to. It was also worth mentioning that a standard spirit stone was a spirit stone that contained about 10,000 strands of spirit chi. Ordinary immortal cultivators could easily determine the size of a spirit stone by using their mental strength. Immediately after, Ziyue discussed with Li Hun and gave him a total of 35 talismans, 15 of which were explosive fire talismans, 11 of which were divine light shield talismans, and 9 of which were spirit eyes talismans. Since he was still short of a few spirit stones, he decided to give the old elementary scholar's golden thread knife to the old man. Even though there was a slight premium, he was already satisfied with this transaction. The moment Ziyue received the jade slip for the second volume of the Purple Chi visualization technique, he could not wait to use his mental strength. Immediately, all the cultivation methods of the Purple Chi visualization technique flowed into his mind. Not only were there cultivation methods from the 6th to the 9th level of the second volume, but there was also a set of immortal sword technique. Chao Yang swordsmanship. Without looking at it carefully, Ziyue's gaze landed on his status panel. Seeing the words soul energy can be used to increase one's strength, he immediately understood that this cultivation method was the real deal. There was nothing wrong with it. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. Nodding his head in approval, he said, "Correct." The transaction was successfully completed. By the way, fellow Taoist, by looks a little familiar. You should be from Clear River Town like me, right? Suddenly, Li Hun asked casually. That's right. We met the last time Lord Li went to Qinghe Town. Ziyue's expression remained unchanged as he spoke in a flat tone. To be able to obtain the immortal cultivation method in a small place like Qinghe Town, his luck is really not small. With that, Li Hun gave Ziyue a meaningful look before walking down. In his heart, he already had a guess about the origin of the first volume of the Purple Chi Divine Observation Technique that Ziyue had. It was very likely that it originated from the 2 books of immortal techniques that he had given to his second brother, Li Su. Among them, the Purple Chi Divine Observation Technique happened to only have the first volume. The other book, the 100 Talisman Catalogue, also happened to correspond to the talisman crafting method that the other party had mastered. Although he did not know why the other party's talisman crafting technique was so brilliant that he could craft powerful talismans such as the explosive fire talisman, the divine eye talisman, and the divine light shield talisman, it did not stop him from affirming his own judgment. Have you guessed it? Ziyue's pupils shrank slightly, and then he quickly became calm. So what if he had guessed it? It was hard to explain the matter of luck in itself. Not to mention that he did not rely on force to obtain the immortal cultivation method, so he naturally did not need to worry about it. Similarly, the other party had no reason to find trouble with him. Of course, strength was the reason why Ziyue became more and more calm. He already had enough confidence to deal with everything. Although they did not manage to trade for a talisman, Ji Fengyang, Zhou Liqing, and the others were not disappointed. They made an appointment with Ziyue to trade again at the next Immortal Technique assembly. In the next half an hour, everyone took out their own treasures and either traded privately or bargained like peddlers. Although Ziyue did not have any extra wealth on him, he had obtained more than 10 spirit stones from the 5 channel elders that he had not used yet. Using this opportunity, he had also obtained a Dharma spell called the Blood Coagulation Technique from the Blood Lady. This Dharma spell was not a Dharma spell that increased one's power. Instead, it was a Dharma spell that could condense the chi and blood energy of wild beasts and strange beasts into one and preserve the chi and blood energy within it. This condensed chi and blood was actually not much different from chi and blood pills and chi and blood pills. They could be consumed directly, but without the neutralization of herbs, the medicinal power might be more violent, and ordinary people might not be able to bear it. Of course, the specific medicinal power was also related to the strength of the qi and blood in the target's body, as well as the cultivator's control of this Dharma spell. In addition to this blood coagulation technique, Ziyue also had his eyes on a few other Dharma spells or other spiritual materials and treasures. Unfortunately, he was embarrassingly short of money, so he could only give up for now. Fellow Taoists, the immortal technique assembly has come to an end here. Fellow Taoist Zhou, I'll leave the matter of the Misty Valley to you. As the old itinerant cultivator, Old Man Wu, spoke, his gaze fell on Zhou Liqing. This immortal technique assembly had started because of him. Because of this, he had also taken out kumquat spirit leaf tea to entertain them. Clearly, he had some ulterior motives. Everyone was inexplicably curious. Everyone knows that I, Old Man Zhou, run this Golden Accord Pavilion. My business is considered quite good in the entire Wujiang County. I also have a group of experts under my employ, and there is no lack of strange people among them. Among these people, there is one called Su Yuliang. He is good at exploiting advantages and avoiding disadvantages, and prospecting for mines and veins. Several copper and iron ore veins in my industry were mined because of his probing. Some time ago, Su Yuliang returned with injuries and told me two pieces of news, one good and one bad. Speaking up to this point, Zhou Liqing paused slightly before continuing. The good news is that he found a silver ore vein. The bad news is that there is a group of Herculean apes entrenched in that ore vein. Of course, if it were just ordinary Herculean apes, even if a Herculean ape king was born and the ape king became a demon, I wouldn't be afraid. With the help of some martial artists I can also eliminate that ape king. However, their residence is a misty valley. After I went to investigate, I didn't dare to go deep and hurriedly ran back. Then, I hurriedly contacted Old Man Wu. That's why this immortal technique assembly was brought forward. What did you find? Everyone looked at Zhou Liqing. Among them, the 5 old men were the most impatient and couldn't help but ask. That place is not only a rare spiritual land. Moreover, I also found traces of a few spirit formations among them. At least in the outermost area, there is a bewildering array. If I didn't see the opportunity quickly, I might have fallen into it. So, I guess that it is very likely to be an ancient cultivator's abode. I know that my strength is limited, so I want to invite all of you to explore together. Regardless of the results, I, Old Man Zhou, am willing to pay 200 spirit stones as compensation. Zhou Liqing clenched his teeth and said, apart from the array that makes you feel troublesome, there should be other things that threaten it, right? Otherwise, if it's just a formation, it'll be enough to wear down the formation with some means. Xie Gu Tsang sneered and said, the one who knows me is Old Man Xie. With a bitter smile, Zhou Liqing helplessly said, I also said before that it is a rare spiritual land. So, not only are there the Herculean apes entrenched in that misty valley, there are also some other strange beasts. Among them, there should be no lack of demons. In other words, there is more than one demon? Pei Yuanwu asked with a change of expression. That's right. Apart from the Herculean ape king being a demon, I also found a huge tiger taller than a person. It is also a demon. As for whether or not there is a third demon, I am not sure. Zhou Liqing was silent for a while and said, I know that you are stingy, Old Man Zhou. How can you be so generous this time? There is still such a big trap waiting for us. Xie Gu Tsang snorted coldly, his face becoming uncertain. It was obvious that there was something fishy about that misty valley. Not to mention the possible ancient cultivator's abode. If the spiritual land was properly developed, it could also be opened up into spiritual fields. Some spiritual rice and spiritual plants could be planted and people would be sent to take care of them. The benefits would be great. This kind of spiritual field was far superior to those in the medicine garden of Green Mountain. After all, in a place that only contained a small amount of spiritual energy, the medicinal plants could only rely on the spiritual energy that occasionally drifted over to grow. Most of them relied on the environment of the soil sac and sunlight for photosynthesis. On the other hand, the soil sac itself was fertile. It naturally contained spirituality that could help spiritual plants grow. In addition, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was rich. When it was watered from time to time, the plants that grew naturally would be greatly different. Even if the plants grown in two places were the same, when they matured, there would be a difference between heaven and earth. The plants that grew in this spiritual field were the most important production and harvest for cultivators of the immortal method. However, the danger was also obvious. 2 or even more demons were not easy to deal with. Some naturally tyrannical demons, even cultivators of the 7th layer of the Qi refining realm and above, would find it difficult to deal with. Everyone knows about this matter. In the end, whether or not you want to participate is up to you. That's right, Old Man Wu has already agreed to join, Zhou Liqing said, and suddenly deliberately reminded them. Old Man Wu has already agreed? Old Man Wu asked in surprise. Yes, I am already 130 years old. 4 cultivators of the immortal method, even if they practice the eternal spring art like me, they can at most live to 150 years old. I don't have much time left. Since there is an ancient cultivator's abode in the Misty Valley, I have to give it a try. Maybe I will have a chance. Even if I don't have any harvest, I will still take the risk and become enlightened in the next 2 years. Otherwise, after a period of time, my body will atrophy and degenerate. My chances of successfully breaking through will be even slimmer. The old loose cultivator, Old Man Wu, said in a low and resolute voice. Chapter 182. The difficulties of being a rogue cultivator are nothing more than this. Elder Zhen said after a moment of silence. Everyone couldn't help but fall silent. Everyone present, besides the burning incense path's Xie Gu Tsang and the immortal ascension pavilion's Pei Yuanwu, at most, there was Li Sun whose background was unknown. They were all rogue cultivators. They naturally knew the difficulties of being a rogue cultivator. Even for Bai Ziyue, because he was affiliated with the Radiant Sun Triad, he could borrow some help to cultivate his martial arts. However, he had to rely on his own efforts and struggles in every aspect of the immortal Tao. For example, if the second volume of the Purple Qi visualization technique had been passed down by a sect, he wouldn't have needed to be so careful and hide his identity and strength. He wouldn't have needed to scheme so much to participate in this immortal Tao assembly. The immortal Tao was endless. In the future, what lay in front of him wasn't just the lack of a cultivation technique. It's difficult to be a rogue cultivator. We can only fight. I will participate in the Cloud Mist Valley this time. However, the distribution of benefits must be discussed in advance. Otherwise, it's hard to guarantee that something bad will happen. The Blood Lady suddenly stood up and said, "With Blood Lady's help, we have a better chance this time. Of course, the distribution of benefits must be discussed in advance. Apart from the 200 spirit stones given to each person, I can give up on the demon cores and flesh of the demonic beasts in the Cloud Mist Valley. You can discuss it yourselves or ask Elder Wu to decide on the distribution. I only need that piece of spiritual land. As for the ancient cultivator's cave, no one knows what's going on. Maybe we won't get anything, or maybe there will be some treasures. When the time comes, everyone will rely on their own abilities." Zhou Liqing was overjoyed and quickly said. The Blood Lady nodded in agreement. The spiritual land was obviously going to belong to Zhou Liqing. After all, he was the first to discover the Cloud Mist Valley. Not only was he willing to provide the reward, but he was also willing to give up all the gains. This was already considered generous. Not to mention, the unknown ancient cultivator's cave abode could be considered an opportunity for everyone. They might have to owe him a favor, so they naturally couldn't be too greedy. In that case, I'll also join. Xie was silent for a while and said, I'll also join. Count me in. There must be spiritual items in the spiritual land. Perhaps there might be some unexpected gains. I'm willing to make a trip there. Following that, Ji Fengyang, the 5 elders, and alchemist Zhang Xianshi all agreed. I know that my strength is low, so I won't join in the fun. All of you know that I'm only skilled in talisman crafting, and I don't have any suitable magic tools, so I won't be participating. Li Hun and Su Pengxing shook their heads and refused. Regarding this, Zhou Liqing had long expected it. Therefore, without exception, he placed his gaze on Ziyue and Pei Yuanwu, who had yet to express his stance. My realm is loosening. I'm planning to cultivate in seclusion for a while, so I won't be going. Pei Yuanwu said indifferently. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed. Blood Lady couldn't help but ask, Big Brother Pei, are you preparing to break through to the 8th level of the Qi refining stage? Whether or not I can make a breakthrough is still unknown. Pei Yuanwu just shook his head. Even so, most people still had looks of envy on their faces. The 7th level of the Qi refining stage was already very powerful. Among everyone present, only Xie Gutsang, Blood Lady, and Pei Yuanwu were at this level. The 8th level of the Qi refining stage was naturally even more powerful. Once Pei Yuanwu broke through, perhaps only the old rogue cultivator, Old Wu, would be able to suppress him with his strength at the 9th level of the Qi refining stage. I'll also join. Ziyue thought for a moment and finally agreed. He didn't have much expectations for the so-called ancient cultivator's cave abode. However, the large number of mutated beasts and demonic beasts in the Foggy Valley made his heart tremble. Cultivating martial arts required him to open 6 meridians. It was carefree, and his strength had indeed increased. However, his spiritual energy had also been used up, and he didn't have much left. Now that he had obtained the cultivation method for the Purple Qi godly visualization technique, he naturally wanted to quickly accumulate spiritual energy to increase his cultivation. In his eyes, this Foggy Valley was an opportunity. All right, Old Wu will inform you of the specific time. Zhou Liqing nodded in satisfaction and said, Fellow Taoist Bai, this is a communication disc. It can be considered a low-grade magic tool. As long as we are within 50 kilometers, I can use this disc to send messages to you. The time and place of the immortal spell assembly is usually confirmed through this communication disc. Old Wu faintly smiled and handed over a palm-sized disc to Ziyue. Thank you, Old Wu. Ziyue naturally knew about this communication disc. He had also learned about it from Xie Gutsang. This communication disc was actually not much different from the old-fashioned phones in his previous life. Through this disc, Ziyue could directly contact Old Wu. In this world, it should be considered an extremely convenient item. When he first heard Xie Gutsang mention it, he was also very surprised. However, when he thought about how it was possible to achieve Tao through cultivation in this world, it wasn't that surprising to be able to make a communication disc. In addition, I hope that none of you will spread the matter of this Foggy Valley. Otherwise, if I find out, don't blame Old Wu for being ruthless in spite of our many years of friendship. Immediately after, Old Wu's face suddenly turned solemn. His gaze coldly looked at everyone. The warning was very obvious. Everyone's heart trembled and they promptly nodded in agreement. Old Wu's 100 years of cultivation naturally couldn't have been smooth sailing, not to mention that he was a loose cultivator. He had fought his way to where he was today. No one doubted the determination and ability of the other party to say these words. Is this the prestige of a peak expert at the 9th layer of Qi condensation? As expected, it far surpasses me. That unparalleled snake demon from before could only run away with its tail between its legs in front of Old Wu. Even though it was only a fleeting sight, Ziyue instantly felt a chill run down his spine. He had a feeling that a great disaster was about to befall him. I wonder how big of a difference there is between Old Wu at the 9th layer of qi condensation and a first-rate expert among martial artists? Suddenly, this question inexplicably emerged in Ziyue's heart. Then, he quickly shook his head and expelled this thought. At this moment, his eyes involuntarily flashed with a spirited fighting spirit. If his martial arts reached the level of a first-rate expert and his immortal technique realm reached the 9th layer of qi condensation, wouldn't everything be clear? Stepping out of the Golden Accord Pavilion, Ziyue first bid farewell to Xie Gutsang and the others. Only then did he determine the direction and head towards his residence. He was extremely satisfied with this trip to the Immortal Technique Assembly. Not only was the technique transformation talisman that he made very popular, it would certainly become a stable source of income in the future. Most importantly, he had finally exchanged for the second half of the purple qi visualization technique, completely resolving the awkward situation of not being able to cultivate. Next, I just need to accumulate soul energy step by step and then directly raise the level of my immortal technique. Ziyue silently thought. He couldn't help but smile. Because he had already cultivated the purple qi visualization technique, he didn't need to wait to raise the level of his immortal technique. Right now, the only thing that restricted him was his spiritual energy. Raising the level of martial arts requires a huge amount of soul energy. Raising the level of my immortal technique requires even more soul energy. The speed at which I obtain soul energy seems to be too slow. I hope that I can increase as much soul energy as possible in the Misty Valley this time. Ziyue secretly sighed. His eyes flashed and his footsteps suddenly stopped. Chen Qingyun. In a small alley in front of him, a young man in a gray robe suddenly walked out in a hurry with his head slightly lowered. With a turn of his body, he quickly disappeared into the crowd. Even if it was just a glimpse, Ziyue's eyesight wasn't weak. Naturally, he recognized that the figure who walked out quickly was the white-robed swordsman, Chen Qingyun, the genius martial artist of the younger generation in Wujiang County. However, the other party was in a gray robe at this time. At the same time, he seemed to be in a hurry. This made him feel a little puzzled. The other party's actions seemed to be hiding from someone. Ziyue couldn't help but quicken his steps and look into the alley. It's blocked? Ziyue couldn't help but frown. This alley was blocked 5 or 6 meters deep. It was impossible to go in or out. Then he raised his head. After a few minutes, Ziyue walked out of the alley. The puzzlement in his heart deepened. It was obvious that Chen Qingyun was hiding a huge secret in his heart. Right, the thing in his hand seems to be a saber. Suddenly, a glimmer of light flashed in Ziyue's eyes. At this moment, Ziyue saw a group of people from the Scorching Sun gang on both sides of the street not far away. They were quickly investigating something. Their eyes were vigilant, and they almost didn't let go of any suspicious person. In the distance, more people from the Scorching Sun gang quickly rushed into the shops on both sides of the street and began to investigate. Among them, Bai Ziyue saw a familiar figure and hurriedly walked up to him. "Senior brother, what's going on?" Ziyue patted Tang Zhanfei's shoulder and asked. "It's you, junior brother." Tang Zhanfei breathed a sigh of relief. Then he said with a lingering fear, "The killer struck again. This time, Xia Yunxiang was killed." "What? The last hero of the 3 heroes of the Scorching Sun gang is also dead?" Ziyue stared and asked in surprise. "That's right. When we arrived half an incense stick's worth of time ago, Xia Yunxiang was already dead. I thought that the killer had stopped for a while. I didn't expect him to strike again so soon." "It's really," Tang Zhanfei said. Even if he had a big heart at this time, he couldn't help but feel sad. 30 minutes ago? Where did he die? Ziyue suddenly thought of the white-robed swordsman, Chen Qingyun, who rushed out of the alley. Could it be him? Chapter 183. Qingfang Street's Lu Donggang. At that time, he had just finished drinking in a restaurant. He was accompanied by several people who competed with you in the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. Among them, 2 died and 2 were seriously injured. That killer's main target was Xia Yunqiang. Otherwise, none of them would have survived. Tang Zhanfei casually explained. Qingfang Street's Lu Donggang. Is he behind that alley? Ziyue suddenly pointed to the alley and asked softly. Only then did he discover that there were several figures on the roof quickly investigating something. Among them, there were several tracking experts from the Law Enforcement Hall. That's right. Nodding affirmatively, Tang Zhanfei said, someone discovered that he escaped from the roof. That's why the gang sent us to investigate this street. Did Junior Brother find something? While speaking, Tang Zhanfei suddenly froze and lowered his voice. I might know who the killer is, Ziyue said in a low voice. Who? Tang Zhanfei's body shook and his eyes widened. That's right, Senior Brother. Apart from Xia Yunqiang, who else died? Ziyue changed the topic and said. Tang Zhanfei's expression was also alert. His eyes quietly swept around. Seeing that no one was paying attention to them, he signaled Vivian to let Ziyue follow him. While walking, he said, Jiang Yuankuan, Li Yinru, Wu Juanhao and Zhang Fang are seriously injured. Slightly nodding, Ziyue didn't care. Soon, he and Tang Zhanfei arrived at a corner. Now, the gang hates this killer to the bone. Just by providing clues, you can get 500 contribution points. If you can confirm the killer's identity, then you can get 2,000 points. Plus, the killer is becoming more and more rampant. I estimate that the contribution points will increase. Junior Brother, are you sure you know who the killer is? If you are sure, don't tell me. Let's go find Hall Leader Zhao together. Hall Leader Zhao is in charge of the Internal Affairs Hall. He is very fair. He will certainly make sure that the contribution points fall into your hand. Tang Zhanfei calmed down at this time and said quickly. Ziyue looked at Tang Zhanfei in surprise. It was not his style to be so generous and upright. I just know my limits. Junior Brother's future growth potential will definitely surpass mine. With these 2,000 contribution points, your development will definitely be much faster. As for me, even if I have an extra 2,000 contribution points, I still won't be able to break through to the inner force realm. It's better for me to hug Junior Brother's thigh tightly so that I can have more opportunities in the future. Furthermore, I know that one of the 10 most outstanding disciples among you will have the opportunity to join a cultivation clan. The evaluation criteria was the contribution point. No matter how greedy Senior Brother is, he won't take away Junior Brother's great opportunity. Tang Zhanfei said seriously with a solemn face. Thank you, Senior Brother. Even if he didn't know how much of his cheap Senior Brother's words were true and how much was false, the other party was indeed thinking for him at this moment. Ziyue naturally had to accept this favor. Half an hour later, Ziyue and Tang Zhanfei stood directly in a reception hall at the headquarters of the Scorching Sun Gang. You said that you know who the assassin is? A middle-aged martial artist with a somewhat scholarly figure looked at Ziyue with a somewhat sharp gaze. This was a type of mental deterrence that belonged to the peak of third rate. When an ordinary person was under such deterrence, they might not even be able to speak. Naturally, it was impossible for them to lie in front of such a person. This was also a method that most experts like to use. That's right. I only had suspicions before. But now, I can finally confirm the assassin's identity. Ziyue raised his eyebrows, as if he was not affected by the deterrence at all. He said with a calm face. In fact, he already had some suspicions when Qin Qingyun first made a move. When the news of Jiang He's death spread to the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, most people were shocked and all gathered in front of those who knew about it. However, Qin Qingyun, who was in the courtesan pavilion of the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, was the last to appear. Although he had some suspicions at that time, he was with Miss Yue after all, so he could not be sure. But now, he saw Chen Qingyun walk out of the dead end with his own eyes. Coupled with the coincidental assassination incident, he knew that the assassin escaped through the roof. Naturally, he could confirm the assassin's identity in an instant. "Who is it?" Zhao Lei, Hall Master Zhao quickly asked. "The white-clothed swordsman, Chen Qingyun," Ziyue said in a deep voice. "It's him? How could it be him?" Zhao Lei and Tang Zhanfei exclaimed at the same time. Wind Cloud Residence. It was said that it was an elegant name given to his residence by a scholar who called himself Wind Cloud Resident. Later, because of the beautiful environment, the unique arrangement of the rockery and flowing water, and even the pleasant atmosphere, it became famous. Often, scholars with similar interests would come to Wind Cloud Residence one after another to recite poems and discuss elegant and humorous matters. However, 20 years ago, Wind Cloud Resident was reported to be in prison because he openly discussed the state affairs. Since then, Wind Cloud Residence had been abandoned. It was not until a few years later that someone bought it from the government. Now, it had fallen into the hands of the white-clothed swordsman, Chen Qingyun. The moment Ziyue revealed the identity of the assassin, even though Zhao Lei was also suspicious, he was very decisive and led a group of people straight to Wind Cloud Residence. As someone who knew the truth, Ziyue naturally followed suit. Of course, there was a middle-aged constable who also had the surname Zhao with him. It was said that he was one of the constables of Wujiang County, and his strength was also at the level of inner force. Dong dong dong. There was a series of knocks on the door. Soon, a person who looked like a housekeeper opened the door. When he saw Ziyue and the others, his expression changed and he asked in surprise, "Who are you people?" "I'm a constable of the government. I have a case that I want to ask your master, Lu Qingyun, about." Constable Zhao stood out and said politely. Chen Qingyun's name in the entire Wujiang County was too well known. Even though Ziyue had already identified him as the murderer of the 3 heroes of the Scorching Sun Gang, he did not dare to be too presumptuous. After all, there was always a possibility. What if he was not the murderer? A third-rate master, and a 20-year-old one at that, was not someone he could offend. "I'll go ask for instructions first," the housekeeper replied in a low voice and closed the door with a bang. Something's not right. Which one of the people present was not experienced in the Jianghu? Naturally, they saw the housekeeper's strange behavior clearly. "Break it open!" Zhao Lei shouted. Soon, 2 disciples rushed out quickly. They had no place to use their weapons and slashed down fiercely. Boom! Boom! There were 2 consecutive sounds and the door was slammed open. "Chen Qingyun, you've committed a crime. Come with us." Constable Zhao had also confirmed that there was something fishy about the other party. He shouted and rushed in first. Immediately after, more than 10 of the sex experts rushed into Wind Cloud Residence. "The Scorching Sun Gang is on business. Don't act rashly. Otherwise, you'll be killed without mercy." After a series of shouts, the figures rushed in one after another. Ziyue naturally followed closely behind. The first thing that caught his eye was a screen. On the screen was an ink painting of mountains and rivers. It was quite grand and vigorous. Beyond the screen, there was a courtyard that looked like a manor with rockery, flowing water, swaying willow trees, and fragrant flowers. From afar, he saw the housekeeper rushing to the backyard. As he ran, he shouted, "Young master, run! You're courting death." A long sword, like a sharp sword, quickly pierced out. Just as it was about to pierce the housekeeper's back, a stone suddenly shot out rapidly. Clang! With a loud bang, the long sword was broken. Even the Radiant Sun faction martial artist, who was holding the sword, spat out a mouthful of blood. He had been injured by the internal energy contained in the stone. "I didn't expect to be exposed so quickly. I thought I hid it well." A white-clothed figure with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes walked out from the backyard and muttered to himself. Beside him, there was an old man and a strong man. Two figures that looked very similar. "It's good that you admit it," Constable Zhao shouted, but he didn't dare to move a muscle. Although he had the strength of the internal force realm, he was far from being able to match up to Chen Qingyun, who was already a third-rate expert. Not to mention, there were two experts beside him who did not look weak. "Liao Yuanxing, Liao Qing, aren't you and your father disciples of the Tai Yi sect? Why did you follow Chen Qingyun and attack the Scorching Sun Gang?" Zhao Lei's body trembled as he took a deep breath and asked. The Tai Yi sect was destroyed by the Nine Seals sect. The Tai Yi sect disciples were either dead or had fled. The Liao father and son had mysteriously disappeared after the great battle 3 years ago. Who would have thought that when they reappeared, they would be standing on the opposite side of the Scorching Sun Gang? "Leader Zhao, I didn't expect to meet an old acquaintance the moment we returned to Wujiang County." Liao Yuanxing raised his eyebrows in surprise and said, "As for the Tai Yi sect disciples? We stopped being them a long time ago. Now we and Brother Chen are the D family's retainers. We're not afraid to tell you that the D family has set their sights on Wujiang County. If the Scorching Sun Gang knows what's good for you, you might be able to survive for a while. Otherwise, you won't be able to escape the fate of destruction." The D family? Heavenly Spirit Lord, the D family of cultivators? Zhao Lei took a deep breath, and his face instantly became extremely ugly. He naturally knew that the D family was one of the two major cultivator families in the Heavenly Spirit Lord. In recent years, they had been developing rapidly and were in the midst of expansion. There were already a few counties in the Heavenly Spirit Lord. Apart from the government, the rest were already under the D family's control. It was obvious that the D family had set their sights on Wujiang County this time. I didn't expect the white-robed swordsman Chen Qingyun to publicly reject the heavy sword sex recruitment because he had already climbed up the social ladder. However, a mere retainer doesn't make me think highly of him. Suddenly, a figure slowly walked in from behind Ziyue and the others as he spoke in a low and hoarse voice. Chapter 184. The Hall Master of the Scorching Sun Gang's Water Affairs Hall, Li Zhao. Ha ha ha, I didn't know that I, Chen Qingyun, had such a great reputation that I could provoke two Hall Masters of the Scorching Sun Gang to appear at the same time. Chen Qingyun laughed heartily, a sense of heroism surging in his heart. However, you underestimate my status as a hanger-on, but you forgot that the leader of your Radiant Sun Gang, Heavenly Blade Jiang Tao, is also a hanger-on. You overestimate yourself. I'm here as a father to avenge my son. The hatred of my son's death is irreconcilable. Not to mention that you're just a guest of the D family. Even if you're the D family's young master, you won't be able to escape death today. After saying that, Li Zhao didn't intend to speak any more nonsense. His footsteps paused, and the ground suddenly cracked. Then, his body shot out like a sharp arrow. A huge machete in his hand seemed as light as a feather. As he waved it rapidly, it cut through the air, causing the air to emit ghostly wails and howls. It seems that one of the people who died today was your son. I only want to say that he was unlucky. Chen Qingyun's voice didn't change. With a clang, a long sword was instantly unsheathed. The sword light shook, and it quickly turned into stars as it charged forward. Kill. The Liao father and son looked at each other, and their long sabers were like rainbows as they charged forward. I'd like to see how much you've improved in 3 years. Zhao Lei was also an expert in the long saber. However, his saber was far thinner than ordinary people's long sabers. The saber light was dark red, and when the long saber was waved, the sound of the saber body vibrating could be heard. One, one, one. The saber light swept out at an extremely fast speed and soon, It stood side by side with the Liao father and son. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of countless weapons clashing could be heard on the battlefield. Occasionally, the saber light would appear, and when it landed on the rockery, it could cut it in half. The rumbling sound was shocking. Go! A disciple of the Internal Affairs Hall shouted and quickly charged toward the son of the Liao father and son, Liao Qing. Compared to Liao Yuanxing, who was a third-rate expert, Liao Qing was at the same level as Liao Yuanxing. Both of them were at the inner force realm, so naturally they could put up a fight. A long sword turned into a ray of silver light and pierced out in an instant. Clang! Liao Qing's expression changed. After desperately dodging Zhao Lei's saber, he went to block the sword. He could not help but cough up a mouthful of blood from his chest. However, as a guest of the D family, he had his own abilities. The moment his saber blocked the long sword, his other palm suddenly turned red and slapped out at a seemingly slow speed. Right at this moment, a long saber stabbed out diagonally. It was Constable Zhao. 4 third-rate experts. 3 inner force realm experts. When they exchanged blows, their inner strength surged. Sword gleams and saber auras crisscrossed, creating a huge commotion. The air that was stirred up was like a bellows that emitted intense buzzing sound. The disciples of the Scorching Sun Gang were at a loss of what to do. In a battle between masters, just the Qijin alone was hard for them to withstand. Ziyue's heart was calm, but he also felt that it was an eye-opener. He quickly determined that among the 4 third-rate experts, Zhao Lei was the strongest. He had opened more than 9 out of the 12 official meridians. Even though his saber was light, his inner strength was dense. When the saber slashed out, it was soft like a breeze. When it was hard, it could cut through the universe. It was a mixture of illusion and reality, causing Liao Yuanxing to be in a difficult situation. In a short period of time, there were 7 to 8 saber wounds on his body. Even though the wounds were not deep, blood was flowing out and his energy was gradually being depleted. On the other side, Li Zhao, as the hall master of the Scorching Sun Gang's Water Affairs Hall, was naturally very strong. Based on Ziyue's judgment, he should have opened 6 meridians like himself. Moreover, like him, he had opened the 3 yin meridians of the hand and 3 yang meridians of the hand. His inner strength was dense and he was full of strength. Even though he was carrying a heavy 7-foot saber, it was as light as a feather. Where the saber light landed, the ground cracked and the fake mountains were sent flying. Chen Qinyun had obviously opened the 3 yin meridians of the foot. His footsteps were nimble and he was often able to dodge a fatal blow by a hair's breadth. Coupled with his sharp and brilliant swordsmanship, he was able to barely hold on. However, as time passed, his inner strength was greatly depleted and he was clearly unable to hold on any longer. Hurry up and attack! Suddenly, the Scorching Sun Gang disciple at the front called out. His long sword was like silver as it quickly pierced out. Ziyue had been itching to give it a try since a long time ago. However, he did not want to show off too much and could only stand on the side with the others. When he heard the call, his body moved. With a leap of his feet, he crossed several meters. Cloud step. A long saber stabbed out diagonally. This saber was not very sharp, but it was extremely tricky. It coincidentally landed on the opening that Liao Qing flashed past. A strong sense of danger made Liao Qing's eyelids twitch rapidly. His pupils shrank and he had no choice but to withdraw his long saber and block with his arm. The saber light turned and the long saber moved several inches away in an instant. Puff! With the sharpness of the Black God saber, even if Ziyue did not use too much strength, it still easily cut open the skin of Liao Qing's arm. Blood instantly flowed out. At the same time, the others joined the battle one after another. The saber light rolled up and the sword shadows were like a net that directly enveloped Liao Qing. Retreat! With a shout, Liao Yuanxing hurriedly clashed with Zhao Lei's long saber. Then, he took advantage of the momentum and flew in front of Liao Qing. He swept out his long saber to help his son out. He knew that if he did not leave now, even if he could survive, his son would inevitably be hacked to death. Therefore, he did not hesitate at all. It's too late to escape now. Zhao Lei sneered. Like a shadow following the body, he quickly rushed over. Feeling a long saber like the Milky Way coming towards him, Tang Zhanfei's body trembled violently. Fear instantly filled his heart. It's over. I can't dodge it. The attack of a third-rate master was too fast. Even if he noticed it, he could not react in time. Just at this moment, the back of a saber hit him hard on the back. The strong force moved his body a few inches away. That saber light only slightly cut his clothes, but it did not hurt him at all. Its junior brother? He glanced at the side and saw Ziyue's originally broad body suddenly shrink. His body instantly crouched down and silently stabbed out with his long saber. Puff! Liao Qing, who was about to escape the encirclement, felt cold at the soles of his feet and fell down. Chance! Constable Zhao's eyes lit up and he quickly slashed out with his saber. Backlight slash! Puff! Liao Qing's head was instantly separated from his body. Dead. I want you all dead. Liao Yuanxing's eyes suddenly widened and turned red. He did not care about the consumption of his inner strength at all. The saber light rolled up and turned into a fierce waterfall. Retreat! The moment Bai Ziyue stood up, he retreated and coincidentally dodged the sweeping saber light. A few quick-witted warriors and Tang Zhanfei, who happened to notice Ziyue, hurriedly retreated and dodged. However, there were also a few sect disciples who couldn't dodge in time and were chopped in half by Liao Yuanxing's hate-filled attack. Even Constable Zhao was sent flying backward, coughing up blood after taking a hit from Liao Yuanxing. However, at this moment, Zhao Lei also sensed it. He blocked Liao Yuanxing's attacks with a few strikes and left 2 wounds on his opponent's legs. Evidently, he was incomparably furious that he was unable to tie down Liao Yuanxing this time. As such, his attacks became even fiercer. In a few moves, Liao Yuanxing was surrounded by danger. It was only a matter of time before he was defeated and killed. Boom! Once again, the saber light slashed fiercely on a rockery, splitting a huge rock that was as tall as a man into 2 halves. Li Zhao did not seem to be tired and slashed horizontally with his saber. Chen Qingyun did not seem to have any wounds on his body, but his face was pale. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth and dyed his white clothes red. However, he did not have time to care about it. Previously, because he could not dodge in time, he had no choice but to meet Li Zhao's attack head-on. However, he was injured by Li Zhao's powerful and turbulent inner strength. I have to escape. Chen Qingyun was anxious as he scanned the battlefield. If he continued to stay here, he would not be able to escape. Thinking of this, he made up his mind. His long sword suddenly split into 2, 2 into 4, 4 into 8. 1 yuan 2 forms split sword technique. Sword light flashed, and the cold light wantonly came crashing down. It seemed to have formed a huge net, wrapping Li Zhao inside. Child's play. Li Zhao snorted and slashed horizontally with his 7-foot-long saber, colliding with the light from the sword. You want to escape? The light touch made Li Zhao react in an instant. His heart turned cold, and he instantly abandoned the weapon in his hand. He turned around and rushed forward. His pair of claws were filled with blood and turned black in an instant. You're courting death. Chen Qingyun was enraged. However, a light flashed in his eyes. He turned around and did not escape. Instead, he quickly stabbed with his sword. Without his weapon, Li Zhao's strength was reduced by 50%. He even had the confidence to kill his opponent in a short period of time. Naturally, he did not want to let go of this opportunity. Humph! Facing Chen Qingyun's sword, Li Zhao's expression did not change. He did not dodge at all. He stretched out his claws and grabbed the sword. Poof! Li Zhao's flesh and blood splattered everywhere, revealing his white finger bones. One could even vaguely see the fine cracks in his finger bones. This sword had directly caused his palm to be severely injured. Even if he could recover, it would definitely be several years later. However, his expression did not change in the slightest. His body approached like lightning and his other hand quickly slapped down. Chen Qingyun was horrified. He retreated and desperately tried to dodge. It was too late. With this thought, Chen Qingyun took a deep breath and hurriedly activated the inner strength in his body. It turned into a barrier and quickly blocked in front of him. Stop! Right at that moment, a deep and resounding voice was heard. Following that, everyone felt a shocking aura rising in the distance. Li Zhao did not care and his palm print landed crazily. Boom! The inner strength barrier in front of Chen Qingyun shattered instantly. The remaining force of the palm print did not decrease and directly landed on his chest. Crack! The sound of his sternum breaking was heard. Chen Qingyun spat out a mouthful of blood and his face was as pale as paper. Chapter 185. The Second Palm Strike. Li Zhao's eyes were filled with madness. The third palm strike. The grudge of his son's death was irreconcilable. He had sacrificed so much for his son's future, but his son had died all of a sudden, as if his faith had collapsed. Li Zhao's heart was only filled with hatred. At this moment, not even the heavenly emperor could stop him from killing. Kill, kill, kill. After one palm strike, another palm strike followed. He used all his strength and almost pierced a hole through Chen Qingyun's chest. Poof! Suddenly, Li Zhao felt his hand go empty. His palm had completely pierced through Chen Qingyun's chest and appeared on his back. At this moment, Chen Qingyun had already lost all signs of life. He hung in front of Li Zhao like a rag. He was dead. Yingru, your father has avenged you. Li Zhao was at a loss for a moment. Then, he laughed bitterly and tears welled up in his blood-red eyes. You're courting death. That deep voice seemed to be extremely angry and quickly made a move. Then, a 7-inch small sword turned into a stream of light and disappeared. When it reappeared, it was still in front of Li Zhao. Be careful! A cry of surprise was heard. Li Zhao was a third-rate expert after all. Naturally, he could feel the shocking momentum coming from behind him. He could also feel the rapid attack coming at him. A strong sense of danger made his eyelids twitch wildly and his scalp go numb. However, he reacted in an instant. His body suddenly leaned forward, and he swung Chen Qingyun's corpse in the air like a weapon and swung it behind him. However, even though he reacted quickly, it was still too late. The small sword flashed like a bolt of lightning and pierced through his body. Poof! Almost without any resistance, the flying sword came out of his body. Then, it paused for a moment and rolled back like a swallow returning to its nest. It was only at this moment that everyone saw a thin but not very tall figure walking out from the depths of Chen Qingyun's courtyard a few dozen meters away from them. Dharma weapon. Flying sword. A person who cultivated immortal techniques. Everyone's expression changed instantly. Immortal Master D, you're late. Liao Yuanxing let out a miserable laugh as his body suddenly knelt on the ground. A long saber had pierced through his chest. The moment Immortal Master D called out for his assistant, Zhao Lei knew that the situation had changed. Thus, he instantly made a ruthless move and killed Liao Yuanxing completely. 7th level of the refinement stage. Ziyue's eyes lit up. His perfect spiritual eye technique had already detected the other party's background. Based on what Liao Yuanxing had said, it was obvious that the other party was from the D family. Retreat. A trace of fear flashed in his eyes as Zhao Lei said in a deep voice. After he finished speaking, the other members of the Scorching Sun gang quickly retreated, as if they had been granted amnesty. Of course, before they left, they did not forget to take away the corpses of the Scorching Sun gang members. Zhao Lei also slowly retreated, but his eyes were fixed on Immortal Master D. His body was tense, and his vigilance was raised to the highest level. The moment Immortal Master D made a move, he would be able to react immediately and deal with it quickly. People who cultivated the immortal method were powerful and had strange method. They were innately feared by others. However, if it was only this point, Zhao Lei, an expert who had already cultivated to the late stage of the third rate and had opened more than 9 proper meridians, would naturally not retreat so easily. What he was really afraid of was the cultivation family behind Immortal Master D, the D family. It was definitely a behemoth of an existence. Even the Radiant Sun faction was far from being comparable to it. He naturally had to be cautious. Immortal Master D looked at Zhao Lei and the others for a while, but he did not make a move in the end. As a cultivator of immortal techniques and a member of the D family, he naturally thought that he was an expert and looked down on martial artists. However, he also knew that there was no lack of experts among martial artists. He was alone, and the other cultivators in the family had important matters to attend to. They would only arrive after some time, so he naturally did not dare to act rashly and cause trouble. "Let's go." Seeing that they had successfully left the Wind Cloud residence, Zhao Lei shouted in a low voice and headed toward the Scorching Sun Gang's headquarters with a gloomy expression. This time, the operation had been extremely smooth at first, but the appearance of the D family cultivators at the end had greatly exceeded his expectations. He could not help but feel a little gloomy. "Hall Master Zhao, since the killer has already surrendered, I will take my leave now. I'm sure Hall Master Zhao will be busy for the next period of time." Constable Zhao finally heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that they had stepped into the safety zone of the street. "Then I won't keep you any longer. If there's a chance next time, I will treat you to a drink." Nodding his head, Hall Master Zhao cupped his hands together and said. It was already midnight when they returned to their residence. The Scorching Sun Gang had achieved their goal this time. Not only had they confirmed the killer's identity as the famous white-robed swordsman, Chen Qingyun, but they had also killed him, eliminating a great enemy. They had even killed the Liao father and son, who were about to make a move on the Scorching Sun Gang. It could be said that they had gained something else. However, Hall Master Li Zhao's death and the emergence of the D family had given everyone a head-on blow. Even Ziyue had not expected that Chen Qingyun would be related to the D family of the Sky Spirit County, and that he was even a follower of the D family. No matter what, I have already done what I should have done. As for how the Scorching Sun Gang will deal with the D family, the gang leader and the other higher-ups will naturally worry about that. As for that Li Zhao, Bai Ziyue's eyes flickered as he revealed a complicated look. There was a grudge between him and Li Zhao. Back then, Li Zhao had ordered Zhao Jing to attack him because of his son's status as an outstanding disciple. Later on, Li Zhao had even threatened and bribed him to give up on the marrow cleansing elixir. This had caused him to have killing intent towards Li Zhao. Originally, now that his strength had increased, he had wanted to take revenge. He had not expected Li Zhao to be so crazy and resolute in order to avenge his son. In the end, he had even died because of it. This made him feel a trace of admiration. Since Li Zhao is dead, the grudge will naturally dissipate. Perhaps to him, being able to die after avenging his son can be considered a kind of fortune. Ziyue thought to himself and put down the trace of prejudice in his heart. Then, he looked at the attribute panel. Spiritual energy, 24,862. My spiritual energy has finally been replenished. A trace of a smile appeared on Ziyue's face. Then, he hurriedly took out 2 jade scroll eyes. One of them was the second volume of Li Hun's Purple Qi Divine Observation Technique. Previously, he had only hurriedly browsed through it. In addition, this jade scroll eyes seemed to be a little special. It was not the kind of item that could only be viewed once. Therefore, it was still intact in his hands. As for the other one, he had spent 15 spirit stones to exchange for the blood coagulation technique from the Blood Lady. Although it was not an exquisite technique, it was quite special. Moreover, with his wealth back then, there were not many things that he could choose from, so he could only choose this technique. Fortunately, there was something special about this technique. He would not look down on it because of this. First, Ziyue picked up the jade scroll eyes that recorded the second volume of the Purple Chi Divine Observation Technique and placed it between his eyebrows. In an instant, the contents of the book appeared in his mind. The 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th levels of the Purple Chi Divine Observation Technique. They are all recorded here. Now, my cultivation of celestial techniques will be smoother and I won't be stuck in a predicament like before. As for higher-level cultivation methods, I'll think about them in the future. Ziyue knew that cultivation methods could not be easily passed down. To be able to obtain the second volume of the Purple Chi Divine Observation Technique and cultivate to the 9th level of the Chi refining stage, he was already very satisfied. As for the higher level of cultivation, he already had an idea, so he wasn't in a hurry to do so. Most importantly, there is a celestial sword technique. The Chaoyang sword technique. The cultivation method of the Chaoyang sword technique instantly flowed through Ziyue's mind. So this Chaoyang sword technique is a celestial sword technique that is compatible with the Purple Chi Divine Observation Technique. If I use this celestial sword technique to control the small sword to attack, I can increase its power by 30% at the beginner level. Once I reach the beginner level, I can increase it by 50%, and once I reach the advanced level, the increase will be doubled. As for the consummate level, I can directly increase the power of the small sword by 2 times compared to using the mind to control the sword. Ziyue hurriedly tried to figure out the cultivation method of this celestial sword technique. He wanted to reach the beginner level of this celestial sword technique as soon as possible. This kind of sword technique that could actually increase his power naturally tempted him. In a spacious courtyard, there was a small bridge overflowing water. The scenery was beautiful. As the gentle breeze blew, a figure was performing a seemingly slow saber technique in an empty space in the spacious courtyard. This saber technique seemed to bear the full strength of the person performing the saber technique. Every time he moved, it seemed to bear the pressure of heaven and earth, giving people a feeling of moving forward under heavy pressure. It seemed like a long time had passed, but it also seemed like only a moment. The person performing the saber technique slashed at the air. Boom! The air seemed to be crushed by some kind of power. Layers of air waves swept out and rolled for a full 10 meters before gradually dissipating and turning into nothingness. From afar, one could see that at the end of the slash, there was an obvious trace of pressure from the air in the small lake, as if the entire lake was divided into 2 halves. Good. With a loud shout, a middle-aged man stepped into the courtyard and said, "The sect leader's saber force is getting more and more terrifying. I guess it won't be long before it forms the saber intent, right? The saber contains the martial artist's will. It can really be considered a martial artist's remarkable ability. The saber force hasn't even reached the advanced level. How can you talk about saber intent?" Jiang Tao waved his hand. He was very clear about his own situation. Then he said, "Zhao Lei, is there something wrong?" He knew that if there was nothing wrong, Zhao Lei would not come to his house given how busy the internal affairs hall was. "There is something big." Zhao Lei nodded and said with a serious face, "You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."